okay? Mr. Mayor, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mary, I can hear you if you can hear me okay. And I will be trying to switch over, just so you're aware, from my phone to my computer, maybe about 15 or 20 minutes. So.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. We might as well get started, I guess. I see that we have our O Canada ready to play, so let's start with our national anthem. Yeah, Councillor Lamb, you were not able to hear that?
No, but that's okay. I mean, did everyone else hear?
Yeah, I heard it.
I did,
Okay.
yes.
Well, I had to tap to unmute, so maybe I was muted. So maybe that muted. Anyway, that's fine. Everyone can hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The municipality of Whitestone recognizes all of Canada resides on traditional, unceded and/or treaty lands of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We recognize our municipality on the Robinson Huron Treaty Territory is home to many past, present, and future Indigenous families. This acknowledgement of the land is a declaration of our commitment and collective responsibility to reconcile the past and to honor and value the culture, history, and relationships we have with one another. Next, I will ask if there is any pecuniary interest to disclose in today's proceedings. Not sure how there could be, but. Okay, anyway, that hearing none, Madam CAO, perhaps, or Madam Clerk, perhaps you can record that it was none declared. Next, we need a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. You're gonna move her and second it, please.
I'll move it.
Councillor Lamb, thank you. Seconded by.
I'll second. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wood.
All right, I'll take Councillor Woods this time. I think he was first, maybe. All those in favor, we need, I guess, since we're all participating remotely, we need a roll call. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods. You're on mute, Councillor Woods.
Sorry, yes.
There you are. Thank you. And Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
All right, thank you. And since we'll be proceeding with no motions on the floor to discuss matters related to the procedure bylaw, could I get a mover and seconder, please, that we move into committee of the whole?
I'll move.
Councillor Bray moves, seconded by Counselor Woods, thank you. And again, we'll take a vote.
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
and Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Thank you. So we're now in committee of the whole as of 4:06 p.m. And I'd just like to make a few sort of introductory remarks before we start going into this. And I guess I can say to you candidly, I'm struggling with sort of how to best make progress on this. but
George,
I-
we can't hear you.
I can hear.
Sorry, you can't hear me? Not at all? Oh.
I
I
can hear
can
you.
hear you
I can hear
okay,
you, Mayor
Mr. Mayor,
Comrie.
on the phone.
Hmm?
Oh, maybe, oh, sorry, my internet connection it says is unstable. Hopefully I can still participate.
Mine does the same sometimes, Janice. That's why I try to kick my video off, and then at least my audio works usually pretty well.
Okay, good idea. I'll try that too.
Yeah, that could be the problem. I don't. I don't think it's at my end, but please tell me if you can't hear me. What I was starting to say is I've been trying to figure out how best to do this so that we actually make some progress and don't get. One of the things that I'm absolutely convinced is that it's not useful for us to sort of go through the document, editing it line by line. We need to find what the sort of policy issues are that are subject to discussion and focus in on those. Keep in mind that once whatever we do today is finished, we will presumably be giving staff direction to incorporate comments that are made, and maybe we'll just kind of take some straw votes or so as we go along on various things. But once that's done, staff will be referring this to legal counsel for a review to make sure that we're not that we don't have things in here that are not legal. And there are, you know, if I go back and look at some of the suggestions that were made in the previous meeting, some of those are in fact, in my opinion, in conflict with the Municipal Act and are not legal. So, and there's absolutely no point in us, you know, there's absolutely no point in us trying to amend an act, trying to amend or create procedures in this way, and so do it and create a violation of other law, right? So, you know, I'll give you an example just so you understand what I'm talking about. The Municipal Act has a provision in it that says that that the chair of a meeting, the head of council or whoever it is that happens to be chairing the meeting, can eject a person from the meeting for disrupting the meeting. I'm just using this as an example. And I see that people have made some suggestions. Well, maybe we should say, well, they can come back if they apologize, or you know, we should have a 2/3 vote of the council whether they get evicted. Those things are ultra vires. They cannot be added to the provision that is in the Municipal Act. The reason for that is that there's a hierarchy of administrative law, and the statute law has precedent over any bylaws or policies or procedures of the municipality. So we can't do things that are not we can't overturn anything or modify anything that is in our enabling legislation. So those things, that's just using that as an example, but that's an example of something that we can't put there regardless of what we think, whether we think it would be good or not, we can't do it. So anyway, when we're finished, all of this, there's going to be a review, and I guess, you know, we need to try and focus on the things that are going to make a difference to how we do our work. And I would suggest to you that we have to look at these as policy from a policy perspective. In other words, we have to ask ourselves, if we want to change something, what's the problem we're trying to solve that the change is going to solve, and how's it going to change it? That's the kind of discussion I hope we can have today. And I hope we can go through and pick out the things that are, you know, significant to how we do business. And there are a few of them that are here. So I don't know, we can kind of, it's up to you, I guess, but we can follow the sort of order of the bylaw as it's presented here. I would suggest that the definitions probably are subject to a lot of maybe most of what would be there would be subject to final edit. So I'm not suggesting we start there, but we could start with roles and responsibilities and then move through, try to identify the things that are significant there, go through general meeting rules, go through then go into the meetings and the notice of meetings and the agenda, which are the main sort of elements of the procedure bylaw. So and of course, you can look at the things that have our clerk has circulated various comments about things that are that people made in previous meetings. But my suggestion would be that we start that we start in roles and responsibilities and leave the definitions till later. Usually the definitions are things that you need, and there may even be definitions there that we don't use for anything. All right, so I'd rather try to find, I'd rather try to focus on the substantive things. So is that agreeable? Can we start with roles and responsibilities and see what?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
if I may, through you, a couple of things. No, I don't agree with. I've got some comments on. In fact, I found one more that I want to talk about under definitions. I see Councillor Nash has one on 1.27. So no, I think we should go. I think we should go through those things that have been identified. I think unless it hasn't been identified as an issue, we just skip over that unless someone now has something additional to add. I don't think it'll take us, too long. With respect to your comment about legal review, I'm in 100% agreement that we'll have a legal review. I guess my feeling is it should be just that. It should be whoever this might be, whether it's our integrity commissioner or anyone else. What is illegal? What can we not put in the document? I'm not much interested in a line by line sort of review legally to say, well, this is kind of unusual. It's not illegal, but it's unusual. Because if we do a straw poll on something and the majority of council is in agreement to whatever that straw poll is, I don't think we should be having, a more expensive review that says, well, our recommendation is it isn't illegal, but, we recommend you don't put it in there. I don't think it should be that kind of review. That'll be far more expensive and intensive, and so, but certainly if something is illegal, as you point out, then and we can't do it, then obviously we shouldn't put it in. So those are my general comments on what you've just said. I don't think this should be as difficult as maybe you foresee. I think we can get through it. So I don't know, hope we get through it in an amicable sort of way. So, but anyway, thank you.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, if I might, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. Just following up to what Councillor Lamb said there. I know myself, I didn't have too many comments, but I did have a few in definitions. I would maybe think, again, it's up to you, of course, as the chair, but I would think maybe if we could go through some of the definitions, but I do agree that we'll probably have to come back to them once we've gone through everything, just so we don't forget it and run out of time. I think if we start at the beginning of the document, and I would agree with what Councillor Lamb said there, and yourself, that I believe that, you know, a legal review would be required for items that we might be changing. But I do think at the same time, we have to be careful in those reviews of, is this something that we can or can't put in, like, is it illegal versus you just don't normally see it. I think Councillor Lamb alluded to that there. But with that said, I think, you know, if we have certain things in our bylaw, as the example that was given, for something such as the chair removing people from a meeting, I do think we have to remember that at any time, councillors can call, for example, such things as points of order and stuff to get that vote. So I think, you know, again, when we go through it and there's a legal opinion, it has to be, can we do what we're asking to do based on our new procedural bylaw that we're writing? Anyways, I think we'll get there. And I think we can get through this document. Hopefully we can get through it today. And I also just wanted to thank staff. I know I did do quite a few comments, and I see my name noted throughout this. So I just wanted to thank staff. I know it's a fairly big document, so the time that they did do to put in comments from other councillors, I appreciate that on their behalf. So thank you.
Okay, well, I hear what you're saying. I'm just going to say again, like I have, for example, a large number of changes that I would make the definitions. We could spend an hour on those if you want. I don't think they matter materially to you know, most of them are cosmetic things, but there's still, you know, I'm trying to, again, avoid. We've had some experience with this, folks. We sit down and we get a document in front of us, and we try to infer the policy from the text of the policy or the bylaw, and it's a very, very long, it's a very, very long drawn out process. So, you know, we had a couple of meetings on this already, and I'm not convinced that we made very much progress. So I was hoping to try to get the big things out of the way and let us get, you know, finish the drafting. But I mean, if you insist, we can go through, and I guess every place there's a red mark, we'll end up having a discussion. But it's deliberately in the interest of I have not put all my red marks into this document. So I didn't have time for starters. I could have done that, but I didn't. The other reason I didn't do it was I didn't think it was a useful process. So, you know, we're we can get bogged down if we go that route. But if that's what you want to do,
and thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I'm not quite sure. I thought, and
I thought we were all asked to provide our comments, which is what I did. I know my name's scattered throughout this document, and I thought the whole purpose of doing the comments was so everybody can see what councilors or the mayor thought, council thought. And we've had this since December, so I don't know how we couldn't have had time to provide comments so that we could all be reading it and probably go through it quickly instead of holding back on our comments. But anyways, I'll leave that at that.
Right, so I don't know what is the first? What is the first thing that comes
Ex
up? in-
officio.
If you're just gonna look. Ex officio.
1.15.
Okay, so, I mean, this is an example of an incorrect definition, okay, but, putting that aside, there's a policy matter, which says that the mayor is a member of all the committees of council unless prohibited. And the mayor is not entitled to vote unless legally specified. Keep in mind, this bylaw was developed from a template that had a lot of suggestions that people made in it. Many organizations, that is the case. The head of the chairman of the board or the head of this I mean, this is a common clause. I personally have not exercised it and don't really care about it. But keep in mind, most of our committees are open to the public. So if the mayor wants to go to them, the mayor can go to them, or the head of council or the deputy mayor or any other. The only problem with doing it, which we'll come to when we start talking about committees. And by the way, there isn't anything in here about committees, so we don't really have we don't have a committee, an overriding committee and task forces policy in the municipality. I don't know if this may or may not be the place to put it, but you run into the problem that if anybody shows up at a meeting, if more than 3 councilors decide to show up at some meeting, then somebody will try to argue that it's
A council meeting.
you're having a council meeting now. I guess if there's, well, anyway, so I don't know, but the suggestion was to remove it. That's the policy issue, I guess. So you can, but
I
it's,
know,
it's common, right? It's a common
Yeah.
provision in a procedure law.
But,
Through-
okay, go ahead, Scott.
oh, thanks, Councillor Lamb. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to say, I think here's an example of, are we allowed to remove it? If the answer is yes, we don't need to, and if councillor isn't agreeable to remove it, it's one of these things, well, if we can do it, we can do it. It might not be normal, but you'd made some good ideas to say, well, sometimes people might think we're in a committee or a council meeting if we have more than 2. And I think any councillor member or the mayor, any member of council can attend a meeting should they want to, and you don't need to be an ex officio. So that's why it just said remove it. I'd read some other bylaws from other municipalities, and I didn't see that in a number of theirs. So that's why I just suggested to have it removed. So I know I'm the one whose name's on it. So, if we can move on, but that's my suggestion. But of course, it's up to council what members of council feel is appropriate. So, and then we can move on to the next item.
All right, well, does anybody care one way or the other, I guess is the question.
Well, I through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm concerned exactly with what you're saying. I don't think the mayor, for instance, should show up at the environmental committee meeting. And not that you've done this. I mean, this not think of just you, but anyone showing up at the meeting and saying, well, I'm not going to vote, but I don't think you should be able to speak at that meeting either, right? Because if there's two members there and you speak, that is a council meeting, in my opinion. So by taking it out, I think just makes it clear. I feel I could go to any committee meeting as long as I'm there and I don't speak or vote. And, you know, the public, if the public's invited, then council should be invited. But they should be mum if they're not on that committee, in my opinion. So I'd be for taking this out. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody want to keep it in? If not, we'll just go ahead and take it out, I guess.
I have no strong feelings either way. I've seen it in many committees and or in many boards and things like that. So I've seen it, and I've hardly ever seen any abuse or of the system. So, but if everybody else feels that they need to get rid of it for some reason, then that's fine by me. It is standard in most organizations.
Yeah, by the way, this is not like, if you did want the mayor to be an ex officio member of all committees, you would need to put that in the roles part of number 2. You can't put it in, you don't put the policy in the definition. That's a drafting error. Okay, so anyway, it's gone. Sounds like it's gone. So
127.
No, we got to stop at 1.16 now. Because I see this as the one. Head of council is a definition that is in the Municipal Act. No, a head of council is the person who is elected as the head of council, the mayor or the warden or whatever, the reeve or whatever the title is. The head of council is not, in the absence of the mayor, the deputy mayor, or anybody else that is maybe filling in for the mayor. That does not make that person the head of council. That is an elected office. So that definition needs to come out. In our case, head of council means the mayor, period. You can say that if you want. I mean, you don't need to, because it's defined in the Municipal Act, but you can't sort of arbitrarily assign other people to be the head of council. The head of council has a set of rules that are defined in the Municipal Act. And when someone else is acting on behalf of the mayor, they only assume certain ones of those. So I'm going to insist that one has to either be modified or come out. So
If I might, through you, Mr. Mayor, and maybe I'm missing something again. I'm on my phone here and trying to look at some papers. I don't see any red lines for that one under 1.16, but maybe it was there before. But here's a definition which might help us work towards something on the definition of head of council. This is another municipal's definitions, and under mayor it says means the head of council includes the acting mayor when acting in place of the mayor. So mayor means the head of council and includes the acting mayor when acting in the place of the mayor. So if we left head of council and you wanted head of council means the mayor, you know, if we did a definition for mayor, which simply says in another large city that the mayor means the head of council and includes the acting mayor when acting in the place of the mayor. So I don't know if we could say that. Head of council means the mayor. Like, you know, just define that a little bit more, what other municipalities have. So again, another municipality in the GTA has mayor, means the head of council and includes the acting mayor when acting in place of the mayor.
well,
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, can I also add in that we've already got a definition of the deputy mayor on page 7, and it says the deputy mayor means a member of council appointed in accordance with the municipality's protocols and policies to act in the place of the mayor when the mayor is absent. So I think we've already got that covered.
well, okay, but I realize that's there, but that's also problematic because there are limitations on what powers of the mayor, of the head of council, a deputy mayor gets. I thought this was all gonna come up under section 2 instead of under definitions, but you see what I mean? Every time you look at a definition that's got an error in it, then you start to come back to the basic policy. Again, I'm just gonna reiterate what I said. Head of council is a defined term in the municipal act. We don't get to redefine it in a bylaw. We
Well,
don't
we
get to
did.
say to the municipal act, sorry, we
Yeah.
don't like your bylaw, we're gonna change it to something else. That just gives you opportunities for people to to file for judicial reviews of some action when something's been done incorrectly. And you'd lose on this one because I explained before, we cannot redefine things that are defined in the municipal act.
Good, well then just simply get a legal review on 1.16. End of discussion. If it's illegal to put in there, then we'll change it. If it isn't, then we'll leave it.
All right, well,
Isn't that a simple way to do it?
yeah,
We don't need to get bogged down in it. I mean, we've lived with this thing for years, right? Again, without much conflict, but just get it reviewed. Janice may be right, you may be right. I mean, none of us are lawyers, so let's not assume we are, right? So, anyway, okay. I also take offense to you saying I insisted. I'm going to insist. You don't assist. This is all by straw poll. Thank you.
well, keep
Maybe.
in mind, I have to sign it when this is all finished, right?
Well, then I'll sign it if you don't want.
No, that's there you go. You see, you're expressing a confusion about what the deputy mayor does not get to just do anything that the mayor chooses not to do. I mean, it's not, that is not lawful. I'm sorry.
George, you know
There's
what?
confusion here. Look, we're not gonna get past this if we don't get this straight. There's seem to be some people that have the idea that somehow or other in our municipal rubric, the mayor is just another counselor, because I don't know, because he has the same number of votes or whatever, and doesn't have any special authorities or responsibilities. That simply is not the case. And it was never intended to be the case. It should be clear to you, every municipality in Ontario elects a head of council independently of the councillors. Why would they do that if the mayor and the councillors were equals in terms of their roles and responsibilities and powers? It isn't the case. And it wasn't intended to be the case. You know, if it were, then you could just elect 5 councillors, and the 5 councillors could get together at the first meeting and decide who's going to be the mayor or who's going to be the head of council. It isn't that way. There are specific things in the municipal act, and you can read them, and that relate only to the head of council.
And that
And-
is.
And I'm not prepared. I am not, I took on a set of extra responsibilities, and I'm not prepared to be undermined by councilors who just think, well, I don't think the mayor should do that. I'm going to do something different. If it's a power that I have, that's fine. I have always, as you know, accepted the will of council in terms of, decisions on policy matters and that kind of thing. In fact, I've done more so than many other councilors, but I'm not willing to just sort of just give away the things that
We're not
the
asking
extra
you
responsibility.
to, George. We're not asking you to. The solution to this is what I said. We'll get a legal review on that sentence And if it's illegal, we'll change it. We should be on to the next subject, okay? And you're bogging it down. Like just settle down. Like if it's illegal, it's illegal. Like no one's saying anything different than that. Come on,
And-
let's.
Well, that's not the impression I get, and I'm sorry. I
And-
think you listen carefully to things that people are say from time to time. We have this, there's a confusion around here, and I, as I said before, I'm not willing to enshrine confusion in the procedure bylaw. How would that be helpful to us? It's not.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I know in the, again, I don't want to get bogged down here. I think a review of it's great. And I think what was trying to be said here was simply, and I'll use probably a good example, when the Toronto mayor stepped down for part of his time, the deputy mayor took over his roles. Or if somebody has open heart surgery and can't be the mayor for 3 weeks, it would be the deputy mayor. So, I think that's what's trying to be said here. When the mayor can't fulfill their role because of whatever reasons, in the absence of the mayor, the deputy mayor will step in. I think that's fair to say. And I don't want to dwell on the definitions of mayor versus councillor, because I think they can be treated too far in either way. People can read what the mayor's responsibilities are and say they're much more than what the book says, and people can read and say they're much less. I don't want to get caught that day. So again, I think a review of this, but what was meant to be said was simply, if the mayor is incapacitated for some reason, that would go to the deputy mayor in his absence, which would be acting as the mayor at that time, right? So anyways.
Which is exactly, by the way, what happened, George, when you had a medical issue a couple months ago. There were a couple decisions that needed to be made, and Michelle called me, and I made the decision. I don't know what I did it as deputy mayor, head of council, or whatever, but I did it because it was necessary, and that's all this is saying. But if it's illegal, then it'll come out.
And I'm sure that when Mayor Armstrong was ill, that there were times when whoever was deputy mayor had to step in. So can we just move on and
Yeah.
we'll get this review and we'll find out what the actual definition should be, but let's get going.
Yes, I agree.
All right, so point of procedure, and this there, by the way, there are a whole bunch of these that, like, for example, there's a definition ad hoc committee, which we should also include in the same definition the word task force or something, because there's multiple terms for things. But 1.27, point of procedure, point of order, point of privilege are all the same thing. Well, point of privilege isn't actually. Point of privilege is a parliamentary term, which allows somebody to speak out of order. So I don't know why there's a reference to point of privilege, but this could be point of order or point of procedure. But it's not.
Then just put in the title, point of procedure / order.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I don't understand what Councilor, I suppose I don't really understand what Councilor Nash wanted, but once again, a verbal statement made by a member, this belongs not, it's not, you don't write the rules in the definition. The definition of how this works, the mechanism by how it works, should be over in the rules of order part of the meeting. It is a point of procedure is a challenge by a member for on a point of order, saying, I don't think we're following the proper order. That's what it is. I suppose the definition's okay, but what were we trying to change here? I mean, I wasn't gonna...
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what I'd asked for I'm just looking at my red lines, like, sorry about that, just as I grab it, was just to add, and we'd have to get to it further along, like you said, was just to add point of order and point of privilege as a definition. And then of course, further along, you'd have to add, a section to it. And again, I'm reading from another GTA bylaw here, for any member of the public to understand, point of privilege. And on theirs, a member may raise a point of privilege at any time if he or she considers that their integrity, the integrity of council or the committee as a whole or staff has been impunged, whereupon the mayor or chair shall, and then it gives the stuff. So there's a definition of what a point of privilege is if it's somebody feels integrity has been compromised. That's what a point of privilege is.
I know
So
that, but
we need-
you
we need a
understand. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, so we need a definition of what it is, and the same for a point of order. And if a point of order and point of procedure are the same, but we need those definitions there so we can then speak to them further along in the book. But I was just calling it out to say I think we're missing a couple definitions here that are very important, and I'd say that one is extremely important to note point of privilege and point of order as a new definitions there, instead of ignoring them, not ignoring them, but just not having them there. So maybe we can come
Okay.
back to that one, but that's why I had it circled.
Okay, so point of order and point of procedure are the same thing.
So
Point
we
of privilege
Right.
is something that is not elsewhere unless I missed it, it's not elsewhere in this bylaw. So we would
Right,
have
which
to
is
write
what-
something that says, you can put a definition if you want, but then now it's a policy discussion. What is it? Do we want, in fact, to give members the opportunity to interrupt? Because these are abilities to interrupt the proceedings, basically.
Mm.
To say, I want to interrupt the proceedings because I believe that I or another member of council or some public official or somebody has been defamed by some comments that were made, and there's nothing. I mean, we can do this. I'm not arguing against you, believe me. But that's something that is not in the rest of the bylaw, I don't think, unless our clerk tells me.
I think the only, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think the only other place that it might go in is when we talk about the code of conduct and the way counselors and council as well as public are to proceed in a meeting or how to act in a meeting.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I think you hit the nail on the head that just like there's a rules of debate section, I think, there needs to be a point of privilege spoken to, like, written out about what should be done. I think there's a number of things that are missing in here. And my highlight of it was just a note kind of saying, hey, we need more and we need something in that. That was also, we have 3.17 when we get to a point of procedure. I'd say 3.17B would be your point of privilege. That's where you'd put it, right? But we can get to that when we can get to it. It's just noting it as a definition so I didn't forget when it comes to the document. So thank you.
Okay, so, all right, so there's something else that would have to be added, but I think we've got a note of it. Let's move on. What about, the next one is a note. It says that per Councillor Nash adds purposes and principles for City of Guelph, page 5. What?
Just hold on a second. So 1.27, we're going to, so Michelle knows, we're going to put in point of procedure / order. That's going to take care of the first part. And the second part, Scott, are you going to supply this point of privilege to Michelle, the exact wording, so that the point of privilege can be put into the document and we'll check it out to see that it's legal? Is that how that was?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have no problem providing that to Michelle if Yep, that'd be
Well, it
fine.
would save, if you would do that, it would save, I'm sure it would save her some time. She can find references to it, no doubt, but,
Okay, I just wanted to make.
and
sure we-
it's, I'm not suggesting it's not legal. It is a perfectly appropriate thing to do if you want, if you.
Well,
wish
let's put it in, and then before we
Yeah.
do it, I guess if people have problems with it, they can speak to it. Anyway, thank you.
So. No, can we go to 1.37? Is this red note about 1.37 or is it about something else?
Just hold on, Mr. Mayor.
Madam,
I'm just trying
Madam
to-
CAO, can you we're at 1.37. Can you tell us what your red comment means?
The, I don't believe it has anything to do with 1.37. It was a note from Councillor Nash that said, that was suggesting that there should be a purpose and principles stated in this bylaw. Now, I wouldn't put it after definitions and before roles and responsibility. It might go, I mean, some of our policies, we have scope and that kind of thing. Lots of procedure bylaws I've looked at don't have a purpose and principle, but you can write something up. It doesn't have to be lengthy, and the intentionality of this bylaw can be stated very briefly. I'm assuming that's what Councillor Nash was asking for. I haven't talked to him about it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that you're right, Michelle. I just reading from some other, as you know, from some other. In this case, it was per the city of Guelph, and they have it as section 2 right after definitions, and it's purpose and principles, and it just speaks, of course, the purpose and the principles of this procedural bylaw. And I don't know, it might be 100 words or something they have. And I have no problem with sending that to yourself, and you can share it with the rest of council. I don't know where it goes, what section, but that's why I put it under after definition, because that's where it was in Guelph. So
Where I would put it is up in the whereas is frankly at the very beginning of the bylaw. It's I mean, that's usually what that's normally where you would say in a bylaw, as opposed to a policy. In a policy, you would have a purpose section at the beginning, right? But in a bylaw, you would normally state the reasons why you're writing the bylaw and what your authority to write it is and so on. And that could be put up there in the whereas. That's where that goes in the whereases, that just there, it's the preamble, and it just sets the tone of what you're trying to do. It has no it's not, none of it's enforceable. It doesn't say, doesn't cause anybody to do anything. It just lets them know what the thinking was behind all the rules that are about to follow. So section 2, again, I have I guess a fundamental issue, and Michelle knows it. We've had this discussion a few times. There's a temptation that people have, and I actually taught and practiced legislative drafting, by the way, in my previous life before I got into municipal politics. And what we were taught to do basically is not, I'm just letting you know, is not to repeat stuff that is in statute law, but simply to refer to it, because province of Ontario can and will several times this year amend the Municipal Act. And if you have a laundry list of things in your bylaw, it could easily get out of sync with the changes to the enabling legislation. And keep in mind, the enabling legislation has priorities. So it's what you find when you pull up the Municipal Act online is always correct. What's in your bylaw might not be correct, right? And that causes people some confusion sometimes. So, but nevertheless, in this particular case, what we've got is we've got you know, some things that the municipal act says. And then we've got assigned the seating arrangements in the council chambers for members prior to the first meeting of council. And
I'll
What?
withdraw my,
I absolutely don't care if you want me to do that or you don't want me to do it. I've never done it, I don't think. But, you know, now you're starting to amend the municipal act, and you might be getting outside of the scope of the, of the.
in
of
the
the
interest of
municipal act.
fairness, in the interest of fairness through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll withdraw I see my name there. That's fine. You can
Well, I
assign.
thought maybe you wanted to get rid of it. I didn't know whether you whether you were arguing against
I
it or
think that-
supporting it.
No, I just think that council can decide where they want to sit. And if there's a conflict, I guess you can decide it, but,
All right.
Through
yeah, I'll withdraw my, I mean, in the interest of time, I don't give a hoot about this, quite frankly. It's done for the next 3 years. So.
and through you,
Well,
Mr. Mayor, I
essentially,
think-
this references sections 225 of the municipal act, and have, notwithstanding what I just said, if you want to copy it there to save people the trouble of having to read the municipal act, that's okay, but I'm not sure about adding stuff to it or taking stuff away from it.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, if I might, I think you made a very good point there. And when I was reading other procedural bylaws, the definitions of be it the head of council, the chair, the deputy head of council, council, and the clerk, chief administrative officer, a lot of the times those weren't in the procedural bylaws. And I think, as you've just said, if something changed in the municipal act, we'd actually probably have to go and change this many times, and it could be a couple times a year. And I think I'm using 2.1 as an example because it's A to K. It just happens to be the head of council, but I could use any one of them. You know, it goes A to K, but a number of those items, you know, A in the municipal act, it says A, to act as chief executive officer of the municipality, which is very similar. You know, A, we have act as a chief executive officer of the municipality. So we've already written out a whole bunch of stuff in here that's already in the municipal act. And I know a number of the other procedural bylaws don't have these definitions there, and that's probably based on exactly what you'd said. Because it might change, and if somebody needs to know those roles and responsibilities as the head of council, I don't think that has to do with our procedural bylaw. That has to do with the roles and responsibilities of the head of council. I think we've kind of included it in the procedural bylaw, but it's really not part of many other procedural bylaws in other jurisdictions throughout Ontario, and that might be why. So I would think it might be easiest to eliminate those items, and that solves all the issues that you were saying.
Okay, what do other people think? Our clerk, in fairness, I told you, our CIO clerk and I had this discussion way back when, 2 years ago. And the risk of putting words in her mouth, I think she thought there was some value to having a summary of these things in the bylaw, just so that people could read it. But I don't know. Do you have any comments, Michelle?
No comments.
What about other Bounce counselors? Do you want this? I was simply arguing either put in what's in the municipal act, the latest version of the municipal act, and leave it at that, or simply reference the municipal act. But it's up to you. What do you want to do?
I'm fine with leaving it out and just referring to the municipal act and keeping it simple. I think if we want to give the public an idea of what the roles are, we could do that in a different format, say maybe on our website, a brief outline, but I think that the procedural bylaw, again, should be pretty just brief and straightforward. And I agree with Councillor Nash. There's a few I've looked at and I didn't see these lengthy, I didn't see the roles printed out or like written out specifically. So that's my thoughts.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have no problem if you want to take all this out and get rid of, I guess, some controversy. What I don't want to lose is, obviously, through this term of our council, there have been several times where, and again, I'm not trying to pass judgment, I'm just telling facts, that, you've ruled members out of order and have, I think, been overruled by the majority of council who didn't feel that that was appropriate or whatever. I don't want to lose that ability. So if if we lose that ability by just referencing the code or the legislature, then I don't want to do that. I still want that in somewhere where the majority of council and maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe I'm. But anyway,
that's under chair of council, and that's one of those things that applies to whoever's chairing the meeting. The chair of the meeting is responsible for maintaining order, right? So you'll see that that's in the next section, and then it goes on. There's more stuff later on in the actual, what I would call the rules of order, rules of procedure part. So I don't think taking any of this out changes anything. It's not. One of the things that we had this to see, the Municipal Act doesn't tell you specifically how to conduct the meeting. And well, it does in some cases, but not. This is why people have procedure bylaws.
Just for the
And-
purpose of my notes, I think what I'm hearing is remove section 2. Have I captured that
Well,
Yes.
correctly? Okay.
Yes, Michelle, I'd agree with that.
were you talking about the whole of section 2, or are you just talking about 2.1?
I'm talking about the whole of section 2. The roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that would be, the definitions would all come out 2.1 through 2.8, because those are already definitions under the Municipal Act that you can find online.
Except maybe 2.2. I don't have a reference in there to the act. But I should,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think 2.2 might need to be left in there. Everything else, if it's
Yeah, to
specific.
be honest,
Yeah.
that's what I thought we were just
Yeah.
talking.
yeah, so we'll leave 2.2 and then all the others that have municipal act references. Well, we've also
2.8.
got 2.8 members of the public. I don't know if we define that.
Well, I don't know.
well, if we're going to leave 2.2 in, there are a couple things, right?
I think 2.8 makes sense. I think it's yeah, I would suggest 2.2 and 2.8, and if there's adjustments to 2.2, and there are suggestions that maybe that's where we focus right now.
Mr. Mayor, we could leave just like the head of council and reference the Municipal Act 225 The same with the deputy head of council referencing 226, like we could do that so that we know that they are there. And then if somebody does question, they can look it up
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I,
and take out
I
most
think, yeah,
of the
that's-
things.
That's what
to
I
be
was thinking.
honest, I wasn't trying to get rid of the whole section. I was just trying to cut the verbiage down in cases where it's been copied out of the municipal act, but 2.2 is not an example of that. And 2.8 is not an example of that. So the rest of them, we can just, yeah. I mean, maybe we can do that. Maybe we don't just get rid of it. We just put the references in. So that would
Good.
leave, no, that would leave 2.2 for open to discussion if we're gonna do that. Is that what, sorry, before I jump ahead, is that what you want to do? You want to leave the skeleton, but not populate, only populate with points 2.3 and, or 2.2 and 2.8?
I think that would be a smart move, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
We
I'd
just
agree
have
with
it on.
that.
Head of council,
Okay with that,
municipal act section 225 as a reference, and then go to the next one. We do 2.2, we'll have stuff there. 2.8, obviously we'll have some stuff, but everything else just refer to the section of the municipal act that is according to the heading.
So, Michelle, can you refresh my memory? Where did where did 2.2 come from exactly? Was it part of the Wishart?
Yeah, this whole document came from Wishart Law, which was a
Oh, okay.
workshop that West Perry Sound, East Perry Sound, and many other municipalities attended for the purposes of building and renewing their procedure bylaw. So that's where that came from.
So let's look at the ones that people have problem. What is the problem, Councillor Nash? I'll ask you. What's the problem with item E?
Can you hear me okay? Sorry, I'm having some phone
Yeah.
problems. Are you, all right, sorry. What number was it? Sorry.
2.2 E, you declined to
2.2
put motions
E,
to
yep.
a vote which breached the procedural bylaw or other legislation. I would
Okay.
think you would expect the chair to do that.
I'm just trying to, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm just trying to find it here. I'm just trying to, 2.2 E, okay. Decline to put the motions to a vote which breach a procedural bylaw or other legislation. Yeah, no, when I reread it, that was just my comment then. I think when I read it, which if they breach the procedural bylaw, yeah, if they breach a procedural bylaw, we shouldn't have it. So I'm fine with removing my comment there. Now that I see it, I was doing this a long time ago, so no concerns with it now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So the next comment was on item G, and I have already spoken to that, so I won't speak to it again, but I'm suggesting that we not try to limit the what's in the municipal act by saying, oh, the council gets to vote on whether they want to support the chair's ruling on this.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I can speak for myself. The reason that I had mentioned add and supported by the majority of council in our current bylaw, procedural bylaw, as you know, it states that. And this kind of comes up to the rules of order and rules of procedure that if somebody feels that something is not being done fully correctly, there can be a vote on it. And I think instead of saying it's the chair's opinion, well, it might be the chair's opinion, but the members of council may say, well, we are not agreeing with the chair on this item, and therefore we feel there should be a vote to see if it's allowed. Be it, I'm just using examples, a member of the public speaking in the public section time and wanting a little bit more time, or it could be on being called out of order. So I think there's many instances in that it doesn't say it says when in the chair's opinion. It doesn't say as per the municipal act. It says as per the chair's opinion. And therefore, I think it shouldn't just be the chair's opinion, but should also be the majority of council that they're agreeing with that opinion that's being made. So I strongly feel that that item should be updated as noted there.
I agree with Councillor Nash.
Well, yeah, I guess. You know, not. The problem is that puts a condition on what the municipal act says.
Well, if it's illegal, they'll come back
So,
with that.
so I think I think it's gonna be struck down. Well, you're gonna
Okay,
be.
well, let's move on then, unless.
Because
And where, through you, Mr. Mayor, where that would have been added would have been when in the chair's opinion, after that word, when in the chair's opinion and supported by the majority of council, the words or conduct of any person. So it'd be right after when in the chair's opinion, you'd then add the words and supported by the majority of council. That's where I see the notes from way back in December where it was scribbled to go in.
Okay, fine. I understand what it is you want. Anyway,
Okay, Jay,
so just understanding there are two, and I think the place for this is farther down in the procedure itself, but because we need to talk about points of order. There's a points of order. We got the definition for it. A points of order is somebody saying, I think we are not saying to the chair, I think we are not following the proper procedure. What happens when that happens is the chair rules on the point of order. And normally speaking, in most settings that I've experienced over the years, that would be the end of it. However, if a person, and you can put this in the bylaw, there's nothing wrong with it, right? But it's not that the chair's rule about the order is final. Then what happens after that is if someone disagrees, they can challenge the chair. And that's when the vote takes place, right? If there's a vote. But the chair doesn't automatically take a vote. So I would say rule on points of order raised by members and leave that there. And if you want to have a procedure to challenge the chair, put it back, put it in the procedure section further down in the thing.
And through you,
there's
Mr. Mayor.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not arguing against having it. I'm just saying, this isn't, this is not an exhaustive list, by the way, of what a chair of a meeting does, but
and through you, Mr. Mayor, I have no problem with what you just said. I think we'd alluded to it a little earlier on that I think point of privilege and point of order need a much bigger definition somewhere further in the document. Now, I have no problem passing those on to Michelle. I'm not sure where it would go in the document, but no problem passing on what I would consider to be, the right out for point of privilege and point of order, so it can go in the next go at this. I just don't know what section it would go under, but no problem adding those. And if those are added in a different section, then I'd have no problem taking my comments for J away if it's defined somewhere else. But yeah, you get to rule on the original one, and then what would happen if people disagree. If that's in another section, no problem whatsoever.
Alright.
whatsoever. So I'll
Okay,
pass that.
so are we okay with them, or sorry, are we through with 2.2? If
Yes.
so, I guess we can go to item 3 now. It says general meeting resumed.
So just by way of cleaning it up a bit, where in J it says rules on points of order, we should be consistent and put points of procedure / order. I think that's what we did earlier, right?
Yeah, it's,
I don't want order just to be there. Yeah, I think it should be procedure / order.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, for that much, I think we might be missing one. That would be the points of privilege as well. So maybe there's a JKI.
yes, you're
Maybe we
right.
need
Points
to-
of order, and points of privilege.
Yeah.
If you're gonna put that, yes, I agree. Points of privilege, I'll make a note of it. All right. Okay, so is that the end of 2.2? Can we go to 3.2?
Do we want 2.8? Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I thought 2.8. Yeah, 2.8 should stay there, I guess. I don't know if you want to put more things, but
I have no comments for it. Just I think it was going to stay. I didn't know.
yeah, it was gonna
Yeah,
stay
they're
there.
gonna speak to it.
Sorry, I thought it was gonna stay there. Okay. So how about, are we ready for 3.2?
I think so.
I'm gonna, yes, are you ready for it?
Yeah, I did have a
Yes.
comment about 3.1, but we can deal with that after 3.2.
Okay, so 3.2. I do not for the life of me understand why we would have a provision, and I know there's one in the existing bylaw, but I don't know why you would have a provision to suspend your procedural bylaw. It's, what is the point of having a procedure bylaw if the council can just say, oh, well, I don't think we want to follow it this time.
Or
You know,
didn't we
that,
the other?
that's a very, that to me is a very strange thing. Now, there's another corollary to this that is, I think, important. Okay, there should be something, and there isn't in our current procedure bylaw, and I don't believe I see it in here. But normally in a procedure bylaw, you would have a statement somewhere that says, and it would probably be towards the end, it would say nothing. Sorry, it would have wording sort of like this: failure to follow this procedure bylaw does not in and of itself invalidate any action or decision of the council. And that's, you'll see words like that in a lot of legislation, a lot of bylaws and things, different ones, maybe not in ours, but why? Because it's almost inevitable that there will be some failure or other to follow procedure. And the courts would typically rule that, if there was some malicious intent in the failure to follow the procedure, or if somebody's rights or privileges were being offended or something else, that could affect the outcome. But if these are simply innocent errors that people made, they forgot to follow the procedure properly, or they, with the best of intentions or whatever, then doesn't give somebody the option to go and appeal to a judge to have a decision of the council overturned or to complain to an integrity commissioner or an ombudsman or some other person, although they didn't follow the proper procedure. There has to be materiality in the legal sense here of this. And so that's what I'm saying is that's your protection. You put something in the bylaw like that is your protection against error or sort of procedural errors. But to just say, oh well, we're gonna rely on the fact that we realize we're violating the procedure, so we're gonna just suspend the procedure bylaw and carry on anyway. I think that could be viewed as malicious intent, if somebody did appeal that. So I think
Well,
I think
this
it's a
came,
mistake.
Mr. Mayor, this is where we get bogged down. This came from Wishard Law, which is a law firm that I suspect they looked at it. So, again, I'm in support of what Councillor Nash says, that it should be by simple majority. That's all the suggestion is. The suggestion wasn't that we throw the whole 3.2 out and that we move on unless there's three others that say we shouldn't move on, and just move on. Like you're not going to convince me. We've already done it in the past. And I think there are cases where we may want to say, yeah, we're going to suspend that for whatever reason. We did the other night. I thought it was a good reason and we did it. So there'll be more in the future. So I don't want to get bogged down. If it comes back and says, oh, that provision is illegal, then it's illegal. But if you're taking straw votes, I'm with Councillor Nash. So.
And thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, all I'd suggested was instead of saying 2/3, say simple majority. I would agree with some of what you said, though, in why do we have this in there if we can just suspend something. With that said, I think it's been used. I've voted against council on some of them, as you know. I think if that item wasn't in there, we probably would have had fewer council meetings already this year because of computer issues or because of timelines for running meetings. So I do think if we just get a legal review, if it's allowed to be there, great, it gets used the odd time. And if it can't be there, it gets taken out and we simply change the word from 2/3 to simple majority. And we just get that legal opinion. Can it be there? Yes or no?
Okay, so what do the others who haven't spoken think about this?
For you, Mr. Mayor, simple majority sounds fine to me.
Councillor Bray, do you have any?
So the legal firm put in the at least 2/3. I'm not sure what difference that is, and why that would make such a something that you'd want to change it to simple majority. So I maybe don't understand the whole issue here of replacing 2/3 with simple majority.
I can jump in. A 2/3.
Yeah, go ahead.
A 2/3 for a 5-person council means 3.3 people, and it's rounded up to 4. So that means 4 out of the 5 people would have to vote for it. A simple majority is 3 out of 5. That's the difference.
Well, if we change it to simple majority and they come back and say that's illegal, then they come back and say that's illegal. So,
Well, they're not going to say it's illegal, Councillor Lamb.
good. Well, then I've heard
It's there as a barrier to prevent the council from just constantly saying, "Oh, forget the procedure. We're just going to do what we want to do," right? Because it still begs the question from somebody looking at it from outside, saying, "Well, why did they bother to have a procedure bylaw if they're constantly setting it aside," right?
Well, we don't constantly set it aside, but we have made decisions against Councillor Nash. His opinion was different. Mentions 3 or 4 times at least. So anyway, I've heard 3 yeses. I understand what Councillor Bray is saying. I've answered that part. If it's illegal, they'll come back to us. Let's move on.
Okay, fine.
And then through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, if I might, I just had a really quick comment about 3.1, which I hadn't noted before, because I just came up with it now when I was reading it. Right now, I can name it. Just hold on one. Where it says at the very last part, where it says the rules contained in this bylaw will be observed in all meetings of council and with appropriate modifications as determined to be necessary at committee meetings. And I just think it should be committee meetings, task force meetings, just to make sure we have task forces encompassed within this and it's not just committees. So I'd like the word task force meetings as well to be added, or committee/task force meetings.
If I may, Mr. High, I would suggest adding local boards as well. We have a cemetery board, a library board. You may have your own. Does the library board have their own procedure bylaw, Councillor Lamb?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But I'd have to, don't take it 100%. You'd
So
have
Michelle, would you,
So
sorry, Councillor.
a task force is defined in this bylaw at the moment as an ad hoc committee, so I think it would cover committee meetings, but I think committee meetings covers task force meetings in this case, but
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just thinking, just for transparency, I totally agree with what Michelle had said there, and I'd ask that task force be there. If we just do it for transparency, committee meetings, comma, local boards, comma, like local board meetings, task force meetings. I think it's just being a little bit more transparent to say, you know, or are we saying it's a task force, read in this little fine print somewhere, it's under committee or an ad hoc. I think we just spell it out to people. It makes it right there in big print, easy for people to see.
okay, fine. What's next?
3.9, isn't it?
Minutes.
So before we get to the red part, through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know whether I'm bothered by the third paragraph or not. The official record of the proceedings of council are the text-based minutes as approved by council. I agree with that. Audio recordings of the council proceedings are recorded as a convenience only and do not constitute an official record. I mean, I don't know. I would think there's all kinds of instances where people are referring to the audio part. You know, you hear Councillor Nash say, well, I didn't say that or did that. I've heard everyone say, well, you know, we have to check, we'll check the audio and find out. I'm not suggesting they're the official record, but our text-based ones, our minutes, as you know, are very, very brief intentionally. And so I don't know whether I'm bothered by this or not. But when I read it, I thought, oh boy, I don't want to make the audio records the official record, but they should be used for clarification or something, or can be used for clarification or something like that, right? They're
Yeah.
for a convenience and clarification only, or something, right? For convenience or clarification only and do not constitute official record. Maybe you should just put the word clarification in there. Because that's what we're doing.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I hadn't picked up on that earlier, but I think you'd probably be correct, Councillor Lamb, that if somebody really went back to the recordings, that somebody would say what was said had been said. So maybe that part just comes fully out. We just don't talk to it. I don't know. Audio recording of council meeting as a convenience only, and just leave it at that. And take out "and do not constitute an official record." Audio recordings of council proceedings are recorded as convenience only, period.
Well, I think my wording is better, saying convenience / clarification only. Right? And do not, they don't, you can't say they constitute an official record, because your minutes do, right? That's what we
Yeah.
approve, not the audio recordings, right? But they are used for clarification. And I'm sure people who take disputes with ombudsmans or integrity commissioners probably refer to the minutes. Does that mean they come back and say that's not an official record?
So I think what the issue behind this is that there's a concern that what happens if the audio is garbled, like you can't, or there's a chunk missing out of the middle of it for some reason or other. It gets and so you can't go back to it and you can't literally verify, you know, somebody says, well I said that, or I didn't say that. You can't verify it. It's the recordings of the resolutions and so on. And that's really all that we put in the minutes. It's really just what did council resolve to do? We typically don't write down what people said. And some other boards and committees and other types of councils and different organizations might in fact do those. They might write much more down for minutes, but the Municipal Act says that the clerk is to record the decisions of the council without note or comment, right? So you know, that's I think that's probably what they were trying to get at when they said this. They don't want somebody to say, well, the official record is the audio, and the only reason is that the audio isn't
Okay, so
like if the clerk, you don't know what happens to the audio. The clerk, if the clerk doesn't hear what somebody says, she's going to get asked for it to be repeated until it's down accurately, and then council, she writes that, and then the council approves it. So, but you know, you could
just take the line out, Mr. Mayor, audio recordings of the meeting, just take that line out. Then it doesn't speak to it.
all right, is that the wish of council? Do you want to take it out?
And we affirm that the official records of council are what's passed in the minute.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that as well.
I'm okay with that also.
Okay, thank you.
And I do. Oh, sorry, Councillor Woods.
I was just saying I was okay with that.
All right, thank you.
And I do have one other comment, just going back to 3.9, when I think we're actually having good dialogue here today. I know it's taking some time, but I think we're making slow progress, but progress, which is needed. Just under the definition, minutes of all meetings will be recorded by the clerk without note or comment. The clerk will make every reasonable effort, blah, blah, blah. But I think we have to define minutes of all meetings will be recorded. Does that mean that we're recording the closed minutes as well now? So I think we just need to make sure if it's all meetings that we're also talking about closed meetings now, or we say minutes of all, you know, regular schedule, whatever it might be. But the way I'd read this right now, this would be saying that there is a digital or audio recording for all meetings, which would include closed. So I don't know what other members of council might want to update that to, unless I'm fine with having the closed meetings recorded. That would be for staff and council, not for the public. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think they probably should be recorded. But I just want to make sure we're okay with that, from what we're saying here.
If
Okay,
I may
so
jump in, I
recorded-
think the intention of the first line of 3.9 is the minutes of all meetings will be recorded by the clerk, not audio recorded and not
No.
video recorded, but simply recorded by the clerk without note or comment. And that's probably from the Municipal Act. It wasn't until, the pandemic that we really got into audio, and then we talk about audio and video on 3.10. So the clerk records the minutes and produces the minutes, or the deputy clerk. So I don't think that was the intentionality. There wasn't audio. It was simply making a record of the meetings and using the word recorded.
Anyway,
Okay, are we okay with that then, or do we want to change the wording a little bit, given there is audio now? Whichever council decides, I'm fine with.
I am not in favor of recording audio or video for
Are-
for
I think what
closed
we're-
for closed council meetings, which is what I think you were talking about. So
I
I-
agree with the mayor. Sorry, Ben.
I agree with the mayor as well. I think what we need to figure out is will be recorded. The word recorded, do we need to change that because we have recordings? Or do we all agree that that means recorded, meaning on paper? Because I think that's what it was meant to be, is that it's recorded on paper by the clerk without note or comment.
yeah,
And
I
that's
would
what-
put I would frankly put manually, will be recorded manually by the clerk without note or comment, just so it's not recorded electronically.
Actually, the Municipal Act says record of meeting, the municipality or local board or committee of either of them shall record without note or comment all resolutions, decisions, and other proceedings. So that's in the Municipal Act.
Well-
But I hear what everybody's saying. Why don't you leave that with me to see if there's a better way of saying that it's not, the intention is not the audio. Because we now talk about audio and video, which we didn't, 3 or 4 years ago. So let me see if I can reword that in a way that it doesn't imply audio.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe it could just be a simple, there's another definition added for what the definition of recorded means or something like that.
I'm happy with leaving it to Michelle to look into.
Yeah, I think we need, I think unfortunately, we need to distinguish between what the Municipal Act is saying, which means I want you to write it down versus recording electronically. So,
Actually, you could say the record of a meeting shall be without note or comment, but leave it with me. Let's move on. I know
yeah,
I need to think about this, and I don't want to think on the fly.
okay, so then at the bottom of 3.9 says audio video equipment is not functioning correctly after 10 minutes of attempting to, the meeting will continue in person. So that's assuming that it's a face-to-face meeting. But again, I mean, the audio video, I'm assuming that the audio video equipment that you're talking about is the equipment that's in the community center when we're having a hybrid meeting. Not the audio video equipment that's used to record the meeting. If it's being recorded, it's being recorded to put on the website, right? So I mean, I think there's I think there's a bunch of different scenarios wrapped up in this here, and if I'm right in assuming, Councillor Nash, if I'm right in assuming that you're talking about what happens in a hybrid meeting in the community center, I guess the question is that would everybody agree that the people after, if the electronic is not working, would everybody agree that the people on Zoom are disenfranchised and we carry on in person? Is that?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I think when I wrote this, I think I've come to some better knowledge of it now. And although I had said this at the time, knowing what I do know now, I think that would be against a lot of laws out there and the ombudsman's office that, you know, if we offer a hybrid meeting or a meeting where people can join via Zoom, if we do have audio problems and we can't fix those, and there are people on that call, as you say, we don't want to disenfranchise people. Even though it said I think we can continue, I think maybe we have to change that to say if there is audio video issues and it goes on for 10 minutes that we have to stop the meeting. I think it's 180 degrees from what it's written here, knowing more than I knew at that time. I don't think we're allowed to continue in the eyes of like an ombudsman's office or something if we do have those audio video issues.
Okay, well, I would expect that there would be something, you know, in terms of what kind of representation you made to people about what they could, what they couldn't, how they couldn't participate. And, but I guess let me cut to the chase and say I'm not in favor of suggesting what was originally suggested to be added here. It depends on the meeting. Okay, like let's say, for example, hypothetically, somebody on the public tried to come in, and I was going to say there aren't any, but there actually is one now I can see. In fact, there are two people. One of them is our fire chief and the other is Mr. Can, it looks like. But there are two people now listening into the meeting. But let's suppose, for example, that the nature of the meeting was a meeting in which the public didn't have any opportunity to participate. If for some reason or other they didn't get a chance to participate fully in, you know, via electronically, maybe it wouldn't matter. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I mean, that's it sort of depends on what you're doing, but because let's face it, at the end of the meeting, they would be able to listen to the recording. They just wouldn't be able to listen to it in person as it happened, listen to it live, right? But I don't know. I mean, that's a subject for some philosophical discussion, I guess.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, my concern is we have a lot of committees. Are we saying these committees have to be Zoomed? And B, if they are and the Zoom doesn't work, that they're shut down?
Well, this is, again, this is all, I don't know if we changed this whole bylaw to apply to all committees, but
Yeah,
if that's what we're doing, then I think that's a mistake, because let's face it, the reality is you may have a face-to-face meeting of a committee in a situation where you don't have any you know, where you don't have any Zoom, you may, or a committee or a task force. So what you do for council, you can't necessarily impose on everybody.
well,
We also in a lot of cases will have committee meetings and task force meetings entirely via Zoom with no face-to-face, because you know that there's no way you're going to get all the people together in one place and time frame you need to have the meeting.
And through, excuse me, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just reading that little booklet that we got from the Ombudsman's office, open meetings. And it says municipalities should monitor any broadcast or live stream to ensure that the meeting is stopped if there are any technical issues, and should consider putting a backup broadcast method in place. So I do think we have to say something here that, you know, it's somehow that we're going to take a certain length of time to try and get a broadcast back up and running, be it 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And if we can't do it, then I think when I'm reading this, it's on page 7 of that little book. It's kind of telling us what we need to do, right?
Well, first of all, I do not accept direction from the Office of the Ombudsman. They have no authority to direct a municipality how to proceed, and they have no authority over the municipal act. Their sole job with respect to the things of this nature is to decide whether they think that open meetings, like closed meetings were held improperly. And if you read their annual report, it shows that about 80% of the complaints they get are rejected. They were found not to have any wrongdoing, but there's an army of people there who are trying to justify their existence at their expense, and I don't think we should be walking around on eggs because of them. So here's the thing. The assertion that statement you read makes is that somehow or other that's the only opportunity that people have to see the meeting while it's being live streamed. There's going to be a recording later on. So if they want to find out what the people in the committee meeting or the council meeting or whatever said about something, if it's being recorded, they could listen to it.
But
Now,
we're
we don't
talking,
necessarily, we also
not-
don't necessarily record all committee meetings and task force meetings. In fact, most of them we don't record, I would suggest.
but Mr. Mayor, when you're talking about they can refer back to the recording, we're talking about when recordings aren't able to be done.
Well, and
That's-
through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's not even a recording not able to be done. Let's say we're on the meeting tonight and all of a sudden the Zoom link goes down. And let's pretend we were in person. So we have an in-person meeting for this. The Zoom link goes down. There's two people on the call. It's a public meeting and they can no longer participate. But we ignore that, look the other way, say, well, the ombudsman can't do anything to us. They're just overpaid and there's too many of them. So therefore, we'll just do whatever we want. Well, that's exactly what we've been doing. And I think that's wrong, right? If they're saying, if you have an audio video problem and you have a hybrid meeting and there's 30 people on the phone, even say there's 30 people on Zoom tonight, it's a real highly debated topic and we just ignore them all and say, the Zoom call went down, no big deal. We'll just carry on with the meeting in person. There's no one in person here. So, we'll just carry on with the meeting. Doesn't matter. I totally think we'd be doing something wrong there. And I think that's not what the public would want. If we have audio video problems and a link goes down, then I think we have to put something in here to say that if that happens, we'll give X number of time and then that meeting would have to be postponed. If we can't continue to run a meeting because our audio video equipment goes down and people can't call into that public meeting and we've publicized it as a hybrid meeting, technically they aren't able to attend in person because it's gone down.
Mr. Mayor, can I speak?
Sure, please.
I look at this as being audio video that, and it speaks mainly to the recordings of the meetings, doesn't talk about Zoom. So there's no mention about this being broadcast live. It just talks about may make or provide for the audio and video recording of meetings and that they'll be available. And so it doesn't really talk about the Zoom link. So I'm not sure whether we need to rethink this or it's added somewhere else. I think the audio video, if it continues and it continues even when we're in person, I'm not sure, as long as it's being recorded, this section, it's doing what it's supposed to do. It will be available online. If we want to put something in about Zoom, about live, then that has to be put in somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. We're actually I think if we were going to talk about what, public access to meetings, this is probably in a different section. I don't actually disagree with what Councillor Nash just said a minute ago. But I was going to point out, though, that we have some meetings, and tonight's meeting is an example. There is actually no provision, and it's an open meeting, and we're not doing anything in secret, keep in mind, but there is no opportunity in this meeting for members of the public, whether they were sitting in the room, if we were in the community center, or whether they're on Zoom, to participate in this meeting. They're not, we don't even have questions from the comments on the agenda, right? It's really a working meeting for council to work on its procedure bylaw for all intents and purposes. So, what does the public get out of participating? They get to listen to the discussion, and that's really all they get. Now, so they're not, if they can ultimately listen to the discussion, they're not disadvantaged in any way. On the other hand, if it is a meeting where we would normally invite input from the public at some point, and then that meeting is, and then the ability of people to connect or whatever is disrupted, then if we just said, well, we're carrying on, those of us who are in the room, let's say, and you could think about it the other way, like, let's suppose, for example, we're meeting in Dunchurch and there's 20 people in the room. If the power goes off in Dunchurch and our emergency generator doesn't work, what are we going to do? We're going to terminate the meeting, because our interface for the hybrid meeting depends on the stuff that is in that room. And all the people are in the room, and they can't, they're not going to just go home and resume to wherever that is and resume by a Zoom meeting, probably. So, as a practical matter, if it's a meeting that the public would expect to be able to participate in some way at some point, and they can't do it, then so I mean, maybe there does, but there isn't. I don't think there's anything in this procedure bylaw about that. Am I right, Madam CIO?
Sorry, say that again, Mr. Mayor?
I mean, is this covered? This isn't really covered in the thing about hybrid meetings later on, is it?
No,
What we're talking about here.
no, it's not.
So I don't know, maybe it's.
I
it's up to
definitely we need to give some thought to this.
Yeah, it's up to council. If you want something like this in the bylaw, I don't think this is the place to put it, but if we could find a place to put it, then we'd have to sit down and say, well, what are the rules we're going to write around it, so that everybody has common expectations of what we're going to do under certain circumstances.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy with that. And I just found one little section here. We'll get to it later. 4.8.6. The following practices will be followed when members participate in a meeting by electronic means. It talks about 10 minutes, but so maybe we can put it somewhere in there and just expand on it. So I do think there is a little part that speaks to some of what we're talking about, but not everything.
Okay, so that was 4.8.6. Okay, all right. All right, so let's keep going if we can. What about
3.12, I think, is next, right? And I'll withdraw my comment on that. Hello?
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you. I think so what is next after that?
Just hold on.
We're at 15.
2.14. Second page of it, page 16, I think is the next one.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
Page 14 of 31, I think, isn't it?
What was it for? Oh, yes, you're right.
Member
Yeah, I think
of
it's on-
the chair will speak to a matter or reply to a matter for longer than 5 minutes.
And I, through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't mind if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I just, whereas going here, if we have a right to speak for 5 minutes, we should be given the right to speak for 5 minutes. The reason I changed it to 10 minutes is we say that in a delegation, members of the public can speak for up to 10 minutes. And if a member of the public is able to speak for 10 minutes, I certainly think that a member of council could speak for the same length of time. That's all.
Well, okay, the members, the delegates get to speak once in the meeting for 10 minutes, and then they maybe get to answer a few questions and they get to leave. The council members get to stay there for the whole of the meeting and speak multiple times. So this is to a matter or in reply. I gotta tell you, some organizations have this down to 2 minutes, and I don't agree with that because I don't, I can't say much in 2 minutes, I gotta tell you, but five is a good standard. I would hate to make it, have people just arguing, well, I got 10 minutes. I mean, that we're going to have to look at having all day meetings if people actually want to take advantage of that, right?
So,
And
and
you know, if somebody is making a presentation, like if a counselor ends up making a presentation to council or something, maybe we treat that as a separate thing. Like, you notice I haven't put a stopwatch or anything, but I am used to to meetings in which now everybody had a computer screen in front of them, and on that computer screen was a clock, a stopwatch thing in the corner. And when you started speaking, it counted down from 3 minutes. It was 3 minutes. It counted down to 0. And that was your reminder that you were getting close to to sort of keep it brief. And if you went sufficiently over the 3 minutes, someone could challenge you. Well, the chair could challenge you.
and
No.
through you, Mr. Mayor, I have no problem leaving it at 5 minutes whatsoever. It was just an idea, but I have no problem keeping it at 5 minutes. I'd just ask that we as council and the chair gives people those full minutes before they cut them off, which happened just the other day, if you recall. So 5 minutes is fine, but I think we just need to stick to making sure that we're given the 5 minutes.
Okay, let's move on.
Councillor Bray has her hand up.
Well, I was going
Sorry,
to say,
Councillor Bray.
I definitely want to keep it to 5 minutes. I think 10 minutes is way too long for a debate, and that 5 minutes, if we can't say what we want to say in 5 minutes, then we shouldn't be talking. So I would not, I'm happy with us keeping it to 5 minutes. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So the next paragraph, again, I don't know. I mean, it almost goes without saying that you, like, keep in mind, you have to be able to write the motion down before you can put it to a vote. A motion must be, and say, if it were me writing this, I would say a motion must be presented or captured in writing. And moved and seconded, of course, but these are, I mean, this is standard procedure. I mean, you can't, nobody's going to put to vote a motion that hasn't been moved and seconded and hasn't been read into the record, so that you can prove that, yes, we did get it written down, right? So I don't know. I mean,
And
that's
through you,
I don't know if that addresses, I'm not suggesting that that we couldn't dictate one, because that's what we do. I mean, in the, uh, the procedure this is now getting, this is rules, this is their sort of rules of order piece, right, that we're getting into here. And essentially, somebody can make a motion and somebody can amend it, and somebody can amend the amendment and do various things, but eventually we get a motion. And in the process, the amendments may have to be voted on and so on. So what I'm trying to say is the world is more complicated than this. And we do not have in this procedure bylaw what I consider to be a rules of order. A rules of order is something like Robert's Rules of Order, Weinberg's, Bornow, Nathan's, there are whole sets of these meetings. And what most organizations do is they say, we will follow Robert's Rules of Order. I'm just picking that one because it's the oldest and most generally acceptable one. And it gets into all these technical questions, like when can you move to defer or table, and when can you do all these other things. But all I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that statement the way it was in the first place, but it doesn't begin to cover all the things that need to be said. The rest of this section is just a little thumbnail sketch of
Mr. Mayor, if I might interject, we're never going to get through this. Once we conclude something, we don't need, thank God we got 5 minutes to speak instead of maybe 2. We're never going to get through this. We're on page 16 and we're at 6 o'clock. We're 2 hours in. We've got to move this along. Yes, no, maybe, go, right? Well, people don't need to be clarified on stuff. Let's move on. We got to get there, man. Come on, or we're never going to finish this. Please.
If I could make a suggestion, my apologies, Councillor Woods. I think what the mayor said, a motion must be presented or captured in writing. I think that says everything. I think that clarifies exactly. We're not going to vote on something that's verbal. We always write it down somehow, some way. But that totally makes sense. Adding those 2 words or captured, I think will solve I think it'll take it where Councillor Nash wanted to go and the mayor as well. And that's the clerk's perspective. I need something in writing, but we can do it on the fly.
And I'm perfectly happy with that, Michelle, what you've suggested and the mayor suggested.
Good, let's
Councillor Woods,
move
you
on.
wanted to say something.
Just a real quick one. I think if it said a motion must be captured in writing, that would be perfect, no? Just change presented. We verbally do it, Mr. Mayor, you capture it or Michelle captures it. That way it's written down, recorded, and that should be fine, no?
Okay. That's me. I don't know. Everybody all right with that?
Good. 3.15A.
And if
So
you'd like, I can.
Yeah, I understand. I agree with this suggestion.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank you, Mr. Mayor. All I was trying to say with there was, I think you noted it, was it doesn't matter who it is. They just shouldn't speak disrespectfully, period. That's all.
Anybody have a divergent opinion about that?
I'm fine
Okay.
with that.
Okay, so let's see if we can get this end of this question to this section. So the next one's on page 17. It's the same thing. No, at the meeting, no person will. Why is it? How is 3.15 different? Sorry, how? Oh,
Mr. Mayor, the first one is for members of council and the second one is for
Any person.
any person in the meeting.
All right, okay. Yeah, no, I see what it is. Okay, but I'm assuming since you agreed to remove the laundry list of people that you could speak disrespectfully to, that you would take it out, right? Right?
Yes. And if I might, Mr. Mayor, I actually had a phone call from a member of the public on 3.15 today. I was surprised I actually got a call about it. And what they were referring to was the next paragraph on page 15 of 31, where it says member of the public's attending a council meeting or committee meeting will respect. But what they spoke to was where it says the mayor or chair may request that a member or members of the public vacate the municipal building if their behavior is deemed to be. And I'm not saying we need to change it. I'm just wanting to note that somebody had phoned about it. And basically they were saying if people start yelling or cursing or whatever it is and acting out, it shouldn't be maybe we'll throw them out. It should just be throw them out. I think what we have worded is fine. I just wanted to note that somebody from the public had commented on it. That was all.
Okay, well, I'm not sure I'm not exactly sure where you're. Oh, okay, I see, yeah, I mean, that is the municipal act. That is a long roundabout wording of what the municipal act says. Okay, so anyway, no matter what else we say here, anyway, I'm just looking. All right, so the time is 6 o'clock, and as Councillor Lamb has pointed out, we're what, halfway through, or maybe, I don't know. Does anybody wish to take a break? I guess is my question.
I'm happy to continue on to try and get through as much as possible.
Yeah, so am I. If we're
I'm
having
the
a
same.
break, it would only be 5 minutes.
Well, I'm just asking if you wanted one. If you don't, we'll carry on. I mean. All right, so we're.
The clerk
now
could
we're-
use the 5-minute break, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I'm
5 minutes it is.
gonna get a glass, I gotta get a glass of water.
Okay.
Sorry, folks.
Why don't you simply do it, Michelle, by each year? And this year we've got the order, and next year you reverse the order. And then the year after you go back to this one, and then back and forth. So it's reverse alphabetical and like just rotate each year of council, right?
Mhm.
Mr.
Okay,
Mayor,
I've got some ideas here. I'll come back to council with some options.
Okay.
Mr.
What's
Mayor,
next?
ask you a
Oh.
question.
Councillor Woods?
I think you'll remember better than me. I think I read somewhere in the municipal act about the way that the vote gets called by name. I might be totally wrong, but do you remember anything like that there?
Say that again, Brian. I'm sorry.
I'm not 100% certain, but I think there's something referenced in the municipal act about how the names are called to see who votes first.
Yeah. We should check it.
Well, I have looked into it, and there's municipalities do a variety of things. So the municipality talks about voting, but I think there's the opportunity there for other methodologies. And you can, some municipalities, it's just normal procedure, and some have it in their procedure bylaw. So I'll come up with some options, as I said, and council can look at them and decide.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm trying to,
I don't know where I've put my copy, which is why I'm
it
asking you.
says except, well, I'm just under voting. Except. Well,
Why don't you leave it with me, Mr. Mayor, and for, you know, for the sake of time? You
yeah,
can-
I'm reading the section right here and I don't see anything that says about the order. It just says every member of council shall have one vote. Then it talks about tie votes, recorded votes. Each member present except the member is disqualified by voting from any act shall announce his or hers vote openly and the clerk shall record the vote, but it doesn't say anything about the order in which you would do it that I can see. And I won't guarantee you because the municipal act is a bit hodgepodge and there's some places where, you know, they might come back at a later section and stick something in that should have been up with the rest of it, but.
Okay, what's
I don't
next?
see it. I don't think there is. Okay, so going down
two-
to the bottom of 320. Are you ready for that one? All I can say to you is that there is not a rules of order on this planet that permits you to move an amendment to a motion that is the opposite of the motion of what was originally there. You can defeat, doesn't mean you can't make a motion that's the opposite, but you have to defeat the one that's there first, not do it as an amendment. So that's a pretty normal provision. I don't know what anybody's issue with it is. Normally speaking, you start out, a lot of the rules of order say you've got to, you know, approve, you've got to put the motion in the affirmative. So the motion would be, I move that we do something. And you know, maybe the majority of councilors do not want to do that something. So what they're going to do is they're going to vote the thing down, but you don't move an amendment that says, I move we not do the something. You just vote the motion down. And then if there's something different that you want to do completely different, instead of the something, then somebody else makes that, at that point, somebody else then introduces the motion for the thing that they really want to do, right? And then
Fine, let's move on.
Yeah,
And-
I agree that if it's gonna be a substantial change, then it can't be an amendment.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, and then we can move on. The reason I'd noted that is, I think when you look, and maybe staff can look at it, when you look at other procedural bylaws, we've kind of put one line there, an amendment which simply changes the motion will not be permitted. And under amendments, we have A and B. And the one I'm looking at right now has about 50 lines to it in the way that you do it. It describes how you go about doing those things. So maybe I can send to staff what I see here, and if they choose to put some of it in there, they can do that. But we can move on for now. But I'll send to staff what I see from another jurisdiction, and maybe the amendment section can just be expanded a little bit more to give a little bit better definition. But we can move on from here tonight.
All right, thank you. So next is section 321, we're on page 20, which is a motion to reconsider. And I don't, in my time on council, remember us doing this. But what we have done, I bet you, in some cases, well, we did it with respect to Washcash Landings is a good point. So we'd have done it as an example. Is we simply overturned something that a previous council had decided to do without a motion to reconsider. And that's, I don't I honestly don't know what is in our current bylaw about this, but I think that's an error. There should normally be you're, and in fact, if you're proposing to pass a resolution that is different from a previous resolution that was passed by a council, then you should normally rescind the previous motion, because otherwise it could be on the books, right? Somebody could say, well, you 2 years ago, you agreed to do this and I relied on that. Now you've changed your mind. And I know. So, you know,
Respectfully, Mr. Mayor, this isn't about that. It's about D and changing 2/3 to a majority, simple. And I don't believe in super majorities. So I stick by what I said. I think it should be by a majority of council, not 2/3. I don't believe in super majorities, particularly in this case. So
okay, well, we're gonna disagree on that one, but anyway, I guess we'll see what the others have to say.
I'd leave it the way that we've requested it to be changed to majority.
Okay, what about the other two councilors? Councillor Woods? Councillor Bray?
Yeah, I guess I'm still of the mind, I'm not sure. I gather that there's a reason why the law firm would say 2/3, and I think it's probably to do with making sure that a motion to reconsider is supported by the more than just a simple majority. I don't know. I don't know enough about this to be able to comment really either way. I just think that if this is part of what, if in all of these situations where they have put in a 2/3 majority, there's probably a reason for it. And I would be interested in knowing why, and is it a protection for the municipality, for the public? How does it affect? Is it just that a simple majority can change things quickly if that's the case, or does it have to be something that has to be really thought out by more than just a simple majority? I guess I would like more information on that 2/3 majority.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I commit to getting that information, Councillor Bray. Our current procedure bylaw says every motion for reconsideration considered at a subsequent meeting shall be declared lost unless supported by a majority of council. So the current bylaw is majority.
Okay.
But that is a good question. Some municipalities constantly do 2/3 and others don't, but there may be a reason in certain situations where you want 2/3. So I'll get some information on that. But I'm just sharing what our current procedure bylaw says about reconsideration. It's a majority, a simple majority.
Okay.
Councillor Woods?
Yeah,
Mayor?
Councillor Woods.
Every other thing that we vote on, we go by simple majority, right? Whether it's, somebody wants to subdivide or zoning change. When we're taking straw polls on questions that we all have, or,
Yeah.
disagreements we may have, we always do majority.
But this
Okay,
is
we've
changing
got-
a decision. The reason there's a higher threshold is because you're changing, you're seeking to change a decision that you made previously. And no, this is, you keep in mind what I said before. This is introducing. This is a procedure that we have not followed when we have changed things. We just change it and take a vote, just as Michelle said a minute ago. but it's a three-step process, and this attempts to put in, I think this is a good thing in general, it attempts to put in a process that says if you want to change something that was done previously, first of all, you have to introduce a motion to reconsider it. And then at a subsequent meeting, you have to reconsider it and decide if you're actually going to change it. And then you may have to rescind the previous motion, which it doesn't say that here, but that's the legal requirement is certainly, otherwise your previous motion still stands. So I don't know. I think there should be a threshold for those things so that they're not done capriciously. And obviously if the council realizes, well, we made a mistake, we shouldn't have done that, then they're gonna agree to, the majority are probably gonna be unanimous, but that's all. I'm just
And
I'm just saying it's not a,
I think,
not a
Mr.
good
Mayor,
idea to
we've,
make it too easy, right?
we've decided this. 3 members have said they want the majority, and Michelle's going to check out the legality of it. Let's move on.
And sorry, Councillor Lamb, just before we move on, I just want to say one thing. It's not about what we're speaking about there. I think maybe when this gets re-looked at and comes back, right at 3.21, it reads, when a motion has been decided, any member who voted with the majority may move for the motion to be reconsidered. The reconsideration of the motion will be called the motion of reconsideration. I think we have two things here, I think, mixed up partly. I think part of what they might be talking about here is even if we vote on something at a council meeting, before the end of that meeting, it can get reconsidered. And that would be, you know, obviously if it's in the same meeting, it would be the way it's spoken about here. But let's say there's a motion that's under new council. It's not speaking to that. A lot of what they're speaking to in the first opening sentence is, I believe, if a motion's being redone during that same council meeting. So I just think we need some clarity there, because it doesn't talk about under new council, and if somebody hadn't voted on it before, right? It speaks to if you'd already voted on that item. So I think there needs to be a little bit of cleanup in the language there.
Okay, so I
Mr.
think you're
Mayor?
right. I think you're right, but yes, go ahead.
I
Councillor
think it's really part of Robert's rule of order and of how to deal with any kind of reconsideration. And whether, I think it has to be probably, you know, for us as council, it should be within our term, or else it could be if, say, Councillor Woods or Councillor Lamb or yourself, Mayor, had wished to bring something forward for reconsideration, that you could, because if you voted in the majority at the time. I think it's just the way it's worded.
Okay, well, that's fine. Okay, I guess we can accept it the way it is. I guess from my point of view, I think we're gonna make sure that now that we seem to be agreeing to what was already in our procedure bylaws, say we should
Yeah.
just make sure we're following it in future, because we haven't.
Yep.
Anyway, and there, it does create some hurdles to cross if you read carefully. Okay, so section 3.22, voting on bylaws. Well, I mean, this is about the bylaw being read 3 times.
This is, I guess, whether we read as I read it, whether we just go first and second reading, and then the next meeting we come back and do the third reading, right? That's the way I read it, but maybe I'm wrong. And we've always historically done the first, second reading, and then the third reading at the same time. So,
You know, I think this came up in a previous council meeting. there are some compelling arguments for having multiple readings of something which is long and controversial and so on. But I think the effect of it is that if we said for every motion, every single thing that we're going to do, well, not every, but every bylaw that we do, if we're going to do it 3 times, then it just prolongs the length of time it takes to pass the bylaw in the meeting if it's something that everybody's in agreement with. So what have we been doing? We've been sort of short circuiting the process and doing it in a single reading and a single vote. But I guess, the risk is simply for something that's really, really substantive. Maybe you want to do that, but you want to do it for everyone. That's the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I might, the only reason I'd put 2 instead of 3, I know it has been spoken to that, and I think it's knowledge now that you don't need to do 3. And I think, like you said, sometimes we read it once and it says read a first and second time. Here we only read it once. So if we're only going to read it once, we'll say once. If we're going to read it twice, we say 2. But I don't think we say we're going to read it 3 times if we don't, right? That's all I was going here. So whatever council wants, I'm fine with. I just wanting to flag it to say, I don't think we actually read them 3 times right now. So, if we say 1 time or 2 times or 3 times, but whatever we do, I just think we put in here and carry forward with it. Can be very simple and quick.
Well, I was going to move ahead in the screen and find it here, but the section of the municipal act that deals with bylaws is further down. We probably need to check and see if there is something in there that stipulates this, but I'm not sure there is, unless you would know, Michelle. I don't know.
So I'm going to suggest once again, leave this with me. There was some discussion at one point when we were talking to John Mascaron, but again, leave with me. I'm going to see what other municipalities do, if there's exceptions to the rule when it's 2 readings or 3 readings, and I'll come back with some information to council.
All right. Okay, so now we're on page 21. The clerk will make a reasonable effort to advertise the special meeting.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, the whole reason I put that is I don't think we make a reasonable effort to advertise a special meeting. It's our duty to advertise it. If we can't advertise it, we can't have the meeting, right? That's where I was going there. The clerk will advertise a special meeting to the public. That's all I was saying. It's not that we're going to try to. We have a duty to advertise it, period. If we can't advertise it, we can't have the meeting, right? So.
Well, I guess that gets at what constitutes advertised, though.
Put it on the Facebook page, I guess is.
Well, I mean, you can put it on the, that's the thing. I mean, is there a notice requirement?
Check.
I mean, this may not be the right kind of place. I mean, there may be special meeting, like this meeting that we're having today is a special meeting. People have known about it for a while, and it was actually listed on the sign, if you noticed, in front of the community center, but of course it wasn't in the community center. But anyway, people did find out about it, and we've got a couple of folks on the call here, I noticed. So then my question is, is there, I mean, as long as there isn't some protocol that says what constitutes an acceptable advertisement, that's all.
Well, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that's exactly what we almost need to do. I think normally when we advertise a meeting, we post it on the website under notices, right? That's what I think most people would think too. If we then go and put it on Twitter or Facebook, we might go over and above. But I think somewhere in this booklet, when we talk about advertising and providing notice, we say that's because it's posted on our website, right? That's where most people are going to go, right? We might post it on a sign, might post it on Facebook, but there's somewhere people can always go to look for where that is. And right now, any meetings posted on our website, right?
So, Madam Clerk, do you have a problem with it just saying the clerk will advertise the special meeting to the public? I mean, is that-
No, not really. We experienced our website going down, right? But if the notice was posted on Facebook, that's still advertised. I just want to be careful that the municipality doesn't dig themselves into holes, so someone can run to the ombudsman's office once again and say, you didn't advertise, your website wasn't working for 12 hours, so therefore you're not in non-compliance, your meeting is illegal. You want to think about those things going forward. You want to be able to manage the business of the municipality. So there has to be some options there for the municipality to adhere to, and not a strict black and white protocol. A special council meeting is different than a special council meeting is planned. You do well in advance, you know what you're going to talk about, you prepare for it, you get an agenda. It's entirely different than an emergency meeting, which could happen. You could call an emergency meeting and expect to meet with council within an hour. You don't know what kind of emergency you might have. So there's some distinction there, but I'm just cautioning council going forward. You just want to be careful that you don't get caught up in semantics.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to say at the end on this part, under special meetings, it can even be public meetings, or not emergency meetings, but closed meetings. I think we owe it. We're writing a massive document here, which is black and white. Well, it has some red on right now, but it is black and white. And to say that we're going to use the word just advertise and then say, oh, well, we couldn't put it here, so we put it there, or we don't want people to attend that meeting, so we'll just post it over here where not many people see it. If we say advertise, it's our duty to, in the definition, define what advertise is. We can't just leave it open-ended. That's what keeps getting us in problems. And that's what does lead to ombudsman investigations and does lead to stuff. If we leave it too open-ended, it looks bad on us too. So right now under special meetings, I'm using the word advertise. I think it should be posted on the municipal website, but we don't even speak to public meetings in here when we're going to advertise, I don't think. But we speak to it for emergency meetings, for special meetings. And when I'm reading here, I don't think we say the same on closed meetings. So I think we're missing some headings here. I might think that, we need to talk about. And if you look at a lot of the other municipalities, they have a large section on things like this, how a meeting's called, and all those things. We've kind of put it into one section here under 4.3.1, but not put it into some of the other ones. And I think there should be a whole section here on this is a protocol on how a meeting is called, how much notice is provided, where it's advertised. We need that outlined for each meeting, not just for some of them. And I do know
hold
we
on,
do have
Councillor
them for
Nash.
some.
One of the things that you're forgetting is when council approves a schedule of regular council meetings, and you have a schedule of regular council meetings, which includes regular closed session council meetings, that's an approved document. It's on the website. That constitutes the advertising. And of course, we post the agenda on the website. It's only the meetings that go above and beyond the regular schedule of meetings, which is the special meetings like today, or an emergency meeting that might happen, or the budget meetings that you do. Those are the ones that need attention in terms of you know, how far in advance you advertise, how many days in advance you need. The emergency meetings, I think, are a special category because those happen because of an emergency. But the special council meetings that are outside of the schedule of meetings that council has approved are the ones that I think you're talking about.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I'd be talking about all of them, I think. In many other procedural bylaws, it speaks to exactly what you've just said, Michelle, but it'll talk about how those are shown, how those are advertised, how they're posted on the website, which might be the yearly list, but it tells people this is where it is, this is how it gets amended, right? Not just we don't speak to it, right? We need to let people know where that is.
In my
Okay. Well, I
15
guess
years,
I'm-
in my 15 or 16 years on council, I've never known when we've ever had an issue with a special meeting. I just can't recall one. Maybe I'm missing something, but anyway.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilor Bray.
5.1.1, the clerk will no later than November 30th of each calendar year submit a schedule of upcoming regular meetings for the next calendar year for consideration and adoption by council. The clerk will post, this is 5.1.2, post on the municipal website the above referenced council approved meeting schedule. This posting will constitute notice to the public of the meeting. So we already have that in here. Thanks. It also says that we may amend the schedule. Amendments will be posted on the municipal website, so we're covering that. So I think that's covered as far as regular meetings. Thank you.
And of course, we've amended that schedule twice now. One to add in, one to change the times of meetings, and at the same time, we added in closed session meetings. And then, of course, we recently amended it to move the meeting from Ardbeg to the community center. And the notice of the change of the notice was on the website, and then the whole schedule is on the website. So you want to be careful you don't try to catch up staff. The staff will, I don't have a problem removing the word reasonable in this case, but you want to make sure that that the effort is there, but you have to watch the wording that it just doesn't lead to someone complaining and moving in, you know, running to the ombudsman's office that we did something 2 minutes later than we were supposed to. So that's the concern I have, that I think this has to be given a little bit more thought to make sure it's reasonable. Of course, you want the public to know you have meetings. You want public to attend meetings where they're invited to attend, and you want people to know about the meetings. But there's a point where, you know, do you start advertising in the newspaper? Do you put it in different news? You know, there has to be some reasonableness to it. And hence the section 5.1, where it does say it constitutes notice.
And
So,
through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to get caught up on this, but I think this is one of the most important items of everything we're talking about tonight. And thank you, Councillor Bray, for pointing out 5.1 or 5, item 5, notice of meetings. And again, you know, if we're 2 minutes late, we're 2 minutes late. If we do something wrong, we do something wrong. If we do it right, we do it right. We're playing on, let's put some gray areas here to help us out, which I don't think we as a municipality should be doing. But with that said, under notice of meetings, it just speaks to notice of meetings. It doesn't talk about notice of meetings for special meetings or closed meetings. And when you look at, again, other procedural documents on other municipalities, you'll see that they've done that same definition, notice of meetings. That should really be notice of meetings, comma, regular council meetings. You kind of need the same thing done for special meetings, for closed meetings. And just reading from one other website, procedural bylaw, The clerk shall give public notice on all regular open and closed council and committee meetings by inclusion on the city's website at least 72 hours prior to the meeting. Very simple. And then it says the clerk may, at his or her discretion, publish notice of council and committee meetings in a local newspaper or other local media source. They're just saying, we'll make sure to put it on a website, but we may do other things, and we'll make sure that's done at least 72 hours. You know, it's very precise, to the point, and clear. But right now, we say notice of meetings, we need to define, is that a regular meeting? Anyways, I'm dwelling on it, but I think this section on 4 and section 5, for some of them, kind of tie together, and I think we just need to clean it up, just cleaned up a little bit. And that new draft might look somewhat different than what we have here now. That's all I was trying to flag on all my red items under 4.3.2, really. And 4.3.1, I mean, sorry about that.
Okay, so there's a couple of different thresholds of situations that occur here. And the first one is, you know, an emergency meeting. An emergency meeting is a meeting that has to be called, and keep in mind, regardless of what the purpose of the meeting it is, whether it's open or closed, or it's a public meeting or various other things. Public meetings are not going to happen on an emergency basis, of course, but you know, an emergency meeting, your ability to notify people, of staff to notify people, is fairly limited. And probably what's going to happen is, if there's a need for an emergency meeting, the head of council is probably going to call you and phone or whatever, or email you and say, we need to have a meeting tomorrow. Who is available? And if you're available, we have the meeting. And is the public going to get notice of it? Well, that's a best effort thing. They might not get notice of it. But if it's an emergency, it's an emergency, right? Now you have a special meeting, and a special meeting is a meeting which is just a meeting that is not in the regular schedule. And it's typically, it's being called for a specific purpose, so it's got to fit in sometime. So there should be some amount of notice that people get. But now this says 24 hours to members, but you can't give the public 7 days advance notice of the meeting in 24 hours to members. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, so the public is going to get, you know, let's face it, we have to have quorum at any meeting. So the first, you know, so the first thing is to find out if the councilors can come, if we can get a quorum of councilors. And when we find a date for that, then it's a question of how much notice everybody else gets then. So I don't know how prescriptive you can be. I mean, I guess it's a question of, you know, if you set a threshold for a special meeting of, let's say for talk's sake, 72 hours or something like that notice, or but anything shorter than that, anything to which you can't have that level of notice is an emergency meeting. So you can kind of set them, you know, you can set the relative clocks where you want, I guess, but
So,
True, you.
but if the meeting has to be held, and I mean, you could have a special meeting that you could, well, you could schedule a month in advance, maybe. It's just because you want to have a special meeting for that subject. And maybe you want to invite the public because they're going to come and talk about a particular thing. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here.
Yeah, no, through you, Mr. Mayor.
But you know, it's a question of, if there's some urgency associated with doing something, then the urgency is the thing that defines how much notice everybody gets, right? That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and all I was trying to say for the emergency meeting part, I think what could easily be added under the emergency meeting part of it would simply be a line that says this is what I'm reading from somebody else's, on emergency or extraordinary occasions, the mayor may call a special council meeting without the notice provided. And then you say in section 5.1, which is how we do our notice, right? So you just say, if it's an emergency meeting, we don't need to follow the 5.0 or the 5.1 items for giving notice, right? We just tie it together to say, if it's an emergency meeting, we can forgive that notice. That's all I was, and would maybe add to there, right? We can maybe add a 4.5.6. It just says something to that effect there, that, foregoing this, the normal notice under whatever section it might be doesn't need to be provided because it's an emergency meeting, right? And the only other item that I'd tried to strike out there, I think we just need to be careful to deal with an urgent matter, instead of just saying an emergency meeting. If you think it's an emergency, you can call it. I don't know if we need the word urgent, but I don't think we need to remove it either. It was just a comment.
So where are you?
Oh, sorry.
You can-
I was
He's in-
4.5.
You've gone up to 4.5. Okay, I understand what you're talking about.
Okay,
Keep in
so
mind
can I-
that emergency, I mean, I don't know. Emergency to me means we declare an emergency. That's a whole different set of rules that for the most part don't involve council, right? So, but an
Again-
urgent, we're talking about an urgent matter, something, some situation has occurred that requires some council to consider what to do about that particular thing. And
So,
there probably is a very tight time frame on it. That's the intent of it, right?
okay, so we're at 7:00 now, so all I'll say about the special meetings is don't lose sight of the only time when we have special meetings like budget meetings or this meeting, that's once, we can advertise or whatever, or whatever advertise means. But there are occasions, and I've been on council, where you get a council meeting that only maybe gets half done. Now, this is going back a few years. And one option is say, or let's take tonight. We only get 2/3 through this thing by 7:30. People say, I gotta go. I don't have any more time. You may want to say, we're going to carry this meeting on Thursday night by Zoom and finish it off. And that would be 24 hours notice that we could do that. And by saying 7 days, we couldn't do that. We could not address that kind of situation. So our hands are tied. Everything's going to be 7 days notice, which if you look further on, it's going to be 7 days. And I think 7 days is a bit of overkill in my opinion, but just don't lose sight of what you're doing here. And we can say everything's got to be black and white. Well, I guess so, but unfortunately the world's made up of a lot of gray. So, just be careful what you're doing. We're trying to rewrite something that we've never had a problem with. But again, I guess we have to have debate, but the special meeting need them for 24 hours. Or else you're going to just back up the business of council. So,
through you, Mr. Mayor, would you be okay, Councillor Lamb, if we said just a little bit more, 48 hours, 2 days notice? Would that work?
Well, I'd rather have 48 than 7 days.
I'd be fine even with 48.
7 days is not.
Yeah.
That's going to cause a whole lot of things.
Fine.
In emergency meetings.
I'd be
Councillor
perfectly
Bray,
fine with 48 hours.
Councillor Bray, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Lamb. I think that, if we go to 7 days, we're just boxing ourselves in and we're gonna have a hard time getting things done. I'm happy with 24 hours. If it has to be 48, yeah, we can do it. But I think if we're just trying to make sure that we can get these special meetings in, we do our best to advertise wherever possible. I think that's what reasonable effort is. You know, advertising where all of the places where we usually advertise. And I think that I really don't have, I think that as Councillor Lamb has said, there's not been a problem to date. So let's not create one, and let's get moving. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just make a quick comment.
Yeah.
If I can bring council back to January, where we had a flurry of special council meeting related to the OLT matter. All of them were important. All of them fed off of each other. They were all necessary. And, you know, reasonable notice was given. Sometimes it was 24 hours and sometimes it was more. But that, there were no complaints. Staff made reasonable effort. The meetings happened. I can even remember one meeting where I was actually on my way home. I had to go home, create the agenda, get it to council so that we could have the meeting in several hours. So sometimes these things happen. So I agree with protocol, but I think if you box yourself in, you know, it'll be nothing but grief, and for no reason in particular.
Okay, so the only note that I have out of this discussion around special meetings, so I mean, it sounds like the consensus is to leave it at 24 hours. The other thing is that we do need a provision for continuation, which I had a note about that in my notes. And I didn't figure out where to put it yet, but there needs to be something to address the matter that Councillor Nash or Councillor Lamb brought up, which is because we've done that before. We've said, you know what, we didn't get finished. We're going to pick it up in a few days. And if the council agrees to that, then yeah, I mean, we give, but it might only be 24 notice. It might be.
I've always advertised those as a special meeting, not as a continuation, because there was no provision for that in the procedure bylaw. I agree there could be. And if
it could be a special meeting as long as you can do it on 24 hours.
Well,
notice.
24 hours notice, yeah.
Please let me, by virtue of what we're saying, you can't, 24 hours, you can't have the meeting the next night because you're already over your start time, right? Unless you have it at 10 o'clock at night or something, right?
Yeah.
So in essence, it is 48 hours. If we wanted to carry on the meeting from tonight, you couldn't do it tomorrow night unless you're going to start at 8 o'clock or something, right? So it would be Thursday night, right? So it's kind of built in that it's 48 hours for special meetings. So I suggest we just leave it at 24 and just move on. And if we have a problem later on, we can always amend our procedural bylaw.
Yeah.
But this is not a hill to die on, people.
All right. Okay. So that takes us to 4.5. Emergency meetings. I, to be honest, like it just the way it is. And I think the idea that the clerk will attempt to notify all members. There are situations in which they might not be able to get hold of one of us. We need a quorum. If we can get a quorum, then we might have to carry on, right? It's an emergent. This is not something that people get used to just because they're impatient. It's got to be, it's an emergency. So I don't know. I'm not in favor of changing it. Is anybody else in favor of changing it?
I'm happy with the way it reads. Thank you.
And
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
so
sorry about that. This is about special meetings, right, still?
no,
This is about emergency meetings.
That's where I wasn't, yeah, that's why I was asking. The only thing I'd ask that we put in there is just something about notice. Right there, we don't have anything about notice, so just like it said too earlier, but it's fine if everybody else is fine with it. Let's carry on. We need to get done tonight, so we can just carry on.
all right.
Okay.
So that takes us to where? Page 25. No, 24, there's one.
What's 21? What's 20?
A canceled meeting, I think again, it's an objection to the words attempt. Well, once
Well,
again, I
and-
mean, what? The clerk will attempt to notify all members about the canceled meeting. I mean, what else can she do, right?
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, what I was meaning by attempt, if the clerk was to send an email to us all, she's notified us, period. Very easy to notify people these days with emails, right? So you don't need to attempt to send an email. If an email is sent to all of council, you're done. It's done, finished with, over. That's all I was kind of referring to. You know, but we can move on. If everybody else is fine with the word attempt, then we'll just leave it.
Okay. All right. Now, where are we? This is electronic meetings 4.8, and it's on page 25. A maximum of 2 members participate. So this is talking about hybrid meetings.
Yeah, and I think, Mr.
So-
Mayor, I was going to say, I think it's hybrid meetings, but I think we need to define that. Right now, it's just talking about electronic meetings, but for example, tonight, we're all on a Zoom call, and technically, if we were to read 4.8.3B, we couldn't have the meeting tonight. So I think we just need to clarify that this is for a hybrid meetings, and then we need to clarify that all members of council may
But-
be able to be on a closed meeting electronically,
Well,
right?
it does say if an electronic meeting at the bottom of part B there this is at the top of page 25, it says if an electronic meeting is specifically scheduled in the notice of meeting, item B above does not apply. But now what we're doing is we're limit how many members may participate in the same meeting. And it's a maximum of 2, and the suggestion is change it to 3.
What would this be for, a hybrid meeting?
It doesn't say that, but that's what we're actually talking about.
So we should change the title to electric hybrid meetings or something, right? So-
Notification of intent. See, it's under the heading of electronic meetings. So then at 4.83 says members may participate in meetings by electronic means, subject to the following. Notification of intent to participate in a meeting by electronic means will be given to the clerk in writing as soon as practical. And then a maximum of, and I would agree with 3, I guess. Members may participate by electronic means, but I don't know, I guess what you, unless you said up front, it's the whole meeting's going to be electronic, in which case then everybody's electronic, like that's what we're doing tonight. And everybody presumably knew that it was an electronic meeting and that there was nothing happening in the community center. So,
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
we've already had one meeting where 3 members were, it was an in-person, it was a hybrid meeting, and we had 3 people that were 3 council members that were on electronically. So I think we need to
change it
we need to
3.
figure out a number. I don't know where the 2 came from, whether that was in our original bylaw or whether
No.
that is being suggested. I have no idea.
It's not, there's no limit in our current bylaw, am I right, Madam CAO?
That's correct. This came, and I can tell you municipalities do different things. Most of them agree that the chair cannot run the meeting unless they're there in person. But the number that they expect to be in the council chambers as part of a in-person meeting can vary. And, you know, if you have a 7-member council, it looks differently. If you have a 9-member council, it looks different. But you're right. We don't have a written protocol, but there has been a case where 3 members of council were absent. We just want to the idea is try to prevent the clerk being the only person in the council chambers or
So why don't we just put 4? I mean, and I agree with you, Michelle, that the chair or the chair of that meeting would be the person, whoever it is, in the community hall in this case, right? But does it matter whether it's 2, 3, or 4? All the votes are recorded anyway in that case. So why don't we put a maximum of 4? Like, why would we say it 3?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't really care too much on the number. I just suggested 3. Part of my thinking to that would be if we added another line that says the meeting chair cannot run a meeting electronically via video call unless the entire meeting is run by that way. I wouldn't, to myself, I don't think it would be right if we'll say that, Mr. Mayor, you were running the meeting, that every counselor is away from the community hall and it's just yourself and the clerk in the meeting. That's why I'd said, we'll say 3. I just think it's a little better if no matter what, there's at least a counselor in the meeting. Hopefully we don't have that very often. That's where I was coming from when I said 3. That was the only reason for thinking of that really the only person that would need to be there would be yourself and everybody else could be gone if they wanted, which I don't think is fair to you at the same time.
Well, yeah, thank you. That occurs to me. And I suppose what would happen in that circumstance, like if for some reason we could only one person could make it to the community center, I would think what we would do is we would change the meeting to a Zoom meeting, because likely the reason that 4 of us can't get there is going to prevent any members of the public from coming anyway. So what's going to happen is you're going to have the minimum number of the counselors and the clerk in the community center and nobody else, right? So why not have it go back to having it as a Zoom meeting? And I mean, I think we can change that to say to people at the last minute, if things are not going to work out, then we might say to people, we instead of canceling the meeting, if a Zoom meeting works, then maybe we would do it. I don't know. I think that should be permitted, that sort of change, but anyway.
Not a hill to die on. Make
No.
it 3. I don't care. I
I'm okay
really,
with 3. So
I
the
do.
chair was-
I feel stronger about that. The meeting chair should be a person. If it's a hybrid meeting, should be a member of council who's in the community center. And in the case of Councilor Bray, where if 2 people, I think George, you and I were both away, and Scott, I think, and I think either Brian or Janice should have run that meeting. But anyway, there's a lot of things that happen in the room that you can't kind of see or whatever. And so anyway, I'm in support of Councilor Nash statement there about unless the entire meeting is electronic means. So I support that going into our bylaw somewhere, or our procedure somewhere here.
Well, it is actually already there. And then you've got it down again at 4.8.5.
Good. So
I
we
think
don't
it's
have
okay.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. The following practices will be followed when members participate. So
Can you just remind me, are we at 2, 3, or 4? So the maximum.
I thought we were at 3, but
Okay,
it's just Brian's holding, Councilor Woods is holding up 3, right?
3 fingers. Okay.
Good. All right. I think 3.
I see it
I
now.
think we're at 3. I'm okay with 3. There was a change 10 minutes. Change to 5 minutes. What was this? Oh,
Where is this?
each member participating, so we're 4.8.6A, there was some,
4.6.
so you should, saying you should be you should be on a Zoom meeting 10 minutes or on an electronic meeting 10 minutes before the meeting instead of just 5, but no.
I think I know
he
where
wanted
that
to
came
change it.
from, Mr. Mayor, that when municipalities first started doing Zoom meetings, there was definitely a lot of confusion about how the
Yeah.
meeting works and are you muted, are you not, can we see your video? We're all pretty experienced now. People know they join the meeting, they unmute, they know the rules, but certainly in the beginning, it was very, very confusing for many people. I'm not just talking about Whitestone. That I think that's why the 10-minute timeline was there, so people can get settled in and understand, what buttons to push and what not to push.
Well, I'm okay to change it to 5, I guess, if you,
Yeah.
as long as that. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not sure why we want to remove B and C though. That's a useful thing. When you're not speaking, it helps if you mute your device because it cuts down background noise.
And I think through you, Mr. Mayor, even if we wanted to put, as we did for the other one, each member participating by electronic means will attempt to mute his or her electronic device. And the same for item C, if we use the word attempt, instead we're talking about gray areas on white and black. Well, it says you're going to do this and you're going to, you'll canvas, and I think you do that sometimes, but you don't do that other times. I think they're there. I understand why they're there, but if you just add the word attempt by both of those, I'd be perfectly fine with that.
Okay. So am I. I don't see, so. We started at 4, so we're at 3.5 hours, would be 7:30, I guess. All right, I don't know how close we're gonna get to the end here, but let's see. This is now item 6 agenda. All right, this is, it is the duty of the clerk to prepare the agenda for all meetings in consultation with the mayor. That's the normal procedure that we have. The way this is written is the normal procedure that we have followed historically. I'm not, it's not that I'm not willing to consult with other people about things, but sometimes we have to make decisions about things based on the size of the agenda, based on last minute changes to things like delegations and other stuff, and so, or availability of, people to speak to things that are on the agenda and so on. I would just ask you the question, what's the problem we're trying to solve here?
We're putting too much on agendas and we're running over our 3.5 hours. And I'm sure there's times where you and the CAO disagree on items that should be put on the agenda and your word is final. I think that there can be things not put on. You responded the other night, I think in council about, I think there was a question from Councillor Nash about something, and you said, I don't even think that's worthy of debate or something, right? And we've had all kinds of problems of bring a motion, or bring a notice of motion, and we've had difficulty on this council with things relating to the agenda. I mean, I don't want to, as the deputy mayor, get overburdened with this thing, but my opinion is that when it comes to agenda items, that, and I'm sure we'll agree 99% of the time, my suggestion is that something happen if we disagree. Either the clerk makes the final decision, which isn't terminal to employment, by the way, or that the item in dispute comes before council as an item for discussion only to see whether it should be put as something, right? So anyway, that's, I guess, my general thoughts on it. I think we've had problems in this council, and I'm trying to address it. I don't know what Councillor Nash, I see his name is on here too, so thank you.
Well, again, the problem, I agree that there's a problem of too many things on the agenda. But most of the time, my role is trying to get things taken off the agenda that are not ready for prime time. And keep in mind, some of this is, we're going to get into a discussion at some point as we move further into the whole question of, how much notice council has to do things, but we run into situations where with just the deadlines that we have right now, staff are working away on various things, and the report that looks like it might be ready to come to a particular meeting is not ready. And very often the clerk will, and I usually agree with her, she suggested, and sometimes I suggest it when she doesn't, but if we see that something is not ready for prime time, as I call it, we know that that's just going to delay the council and frustrate the councilors. It's going to delay the meeting and make it go overtime and all that kind of thing. And so, that's the role that we're taking. But again, what we're at, if we were to say as a council, well, we're going to have a committee of 3 people that get together and go over an agenda and finalize it, that's got to be scheduled. It's got to happen well enough in advance of the meeting that staff can respond, put things together. And it's going to, it's going to, back up our whole process, it seems to me. The more people we get involved in making these decisions, sometimes they happen, just the day before the agenda goes out, and there's not a lot of time to, so.
Well, I
think we're making it more, I think we're adding a complexity to it that's going to be difficult too. And then we're going to get into arguments about, well, how this going on. The other thing that's playing against this is people trying to insist that they have a right to put things on the agenda. And I agree totally that councilors have a right to get things on the agenda, but there has to be a proper protocol for how they get there. And there has to be some respect for what's already on the agenda and how much time the item they want to talk about is going to take, and where best to put it, which meeting to put it on.
Well, I
You
don't
can't
think,
just say,
I think all
I
the things
insist
that,
on talking about this tomorrow at the next meeting or at the next meeting.
but I think that's more the reason that you might want some input. What you're just saying is more the reason you may want some input, and might like a sobering second thought on some stuff. So, but anyway, it's whatever the will of council is, right?
Okay, Councillor Bray.
Yeah, my only comment about that is I understand it's kind of difficult to get everybody together, and you can work on that if that's the way council wants to go. My thing is that if somebody thinks that something's going to be on the agenda and it's taken off, that person really needs to be informed that it's being removed before the meeting, and they know why. Because I think it's only fair for people to have that understanding. And also, you know, if the CAO and the mayor decide that something isn't ready for going to council, that's fine. I can see that happen. I've seen that happen in the DSAB. I've seen how it's worked, so I understand that. I think though that the person needs to know why, so that if there's something they need to do in order to make it get to council, that needs to be verbalized. That needs to be there for that person, because I don't think we just sort of leave people in limbo. And I guess I will say that I feel like the fire chief was left in limbo when he had first tried to put that fire truck on the council, and it was removed, but not really told why and not told what he needs to do. So I just think that it's important for us to make sure that we're not just excluding things from the agenda without letting the person know. If it's because the agenda is too full, that's fine. Let them know the agenda is too full. It'll be on, you know, the next one or the one after that. I can understand that. Or if there are things that need to be added, then I would say that they need to understand why. Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, if I might, if Councillor Bray was finished there. I know we're only speaking to 6.1.1. I think the agenda item will probably take some time because I know there's quite a few items on it. But I would agree that I think it would help if there's just sometimes a third eye on it. That's why I kind of said, you know, I'm sure the mayor and the deputy mayor can get along and have a quick conversation as to what's on that agenda. And I'd said where there is a dispute about including or excluding an item on the agenda, the mayor's decision will be final. That's why I'd said about striking that out. I think it can be you know, if you have the clerk, deputy clerk, and the mayor, it can be, you know, again, we go to the majority, not 2/3 vote, but you go to the majority or rule if on that item as to what's going to be on the agenda. You have 3 people there, and I'm guessing that the vast majority of the time, the 3 of you, in the case of yourself, Councillor Lamb and Michelle, that I think you guys would probably agree the vast majority of the time. And I do agree with Councillor Bray that I think if something's going to be excluded, there has to be a real detailed reason, or a detailed reason as to why it has been removed, if it was on, or if it had been asked to be placed on and it was not. And I think that's fair to everybody as well.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'll quickly
Go ahead.
explain to council the process. The clerk's department, myself, and whoever's able to help, I put the agenda together. I know if there's deputations that have been requested, and we try to limit it to 2 per meeting, because sometimes they do go longer than 10 minutes. We know it's a business meeting. The planning matters, you know, those are set by simply timelines, or public meetings are set by timelines, predetermined timelines. Staff reports that I know are coming forward, you know, quarterly reports, we all know that. And I can say there's the mayor, I send the mayor the agenda, the draft agenda on Tuesday, late in the day. And there's times where the mayor and I don't even have a conversation. The mayor has the opportunity to give me a call and you know, dispute something on the agenda, or ask what it is more often what happens. But at our end, I definitely try to balance. I look at, you know, if we have a heavy planning meeting, for instance, there's staff reports that can wait till the next meeting. So a lot of that balancing is done ahead of time, not always, because sometimes there's issues that simply have to be addressed, and there's issues that unexpectedly take a long time. So, you know, from my perspective, there's very, very few times where there's been a dispute or a discussion whether something should be on the agenda or not. And even as the mayor said, if something ready for prime time, that's happened a handful of times. Very, very few.
Okay,
So
so
that's the process for setting the agenda. It's mostly done at the clerk's department. the mayor sees it and usually nothing too controversial.
Yeah, I think perhaps you imagine that there's more that goes on here than you think, but in any case, I honestly don't know what to do with that. I mean, I think we can have, it's not that I'm opposed to having conversations with
Counselor
Councillor
Woods?
about specific issues. It's just that we would have to schedule a time to do this that works for the clerk, and it's going to, I can tell you that the effect of it, because of everyone's commitments for other things, is going to push the decision time out further to the front, right?
No,
Mr. Mayor, could I suggest that we do a motion to extend the meeting for Kirchhoff?
Well, that was the next thing I was just trying to get off this page, but
Not to disrupt I know we can come back to this conversation, but
I'm just looking at how much more red there is. I'm honestly not convinced that half an hour is gonna happen, gonna do it. But I don't know.
I'll make the motion to extend.
Okay, but you're extending for half an hour, right?
I don't care if we can't get done in the half hours, then extend it for an hour. How much is
Well,
left?
I'm gonna say, if you want the meeting to go to 9 o'clock or something, I'm gonna go grab something to eat while I'm here, if you don't mind, but 'cause
I don't think
wanna,
there's,
I mean,
I think we
I
should
want
be
to
able-
either wrap up in half an hour or take another short break and get something and then come back and carry on, but if you want it, those are kind of the choices.
well,
I
wait,
have.
okay, in a half hour, can we extend it further, or if I extend it, is it done?
Well, I'm trying to say, as far as I'm concerned, I can take a break and then we can extend longer, but if you want, but if we're not going to take a break, then half an hour, I'm done anyway. I guess you guys can talk the rest of the night if you want, but I'm not
We-
going to be here.
We have 6 pages still to go
Yeah.
with a fair amount of comments.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to get to the part that is has quite a bit of around council packages and things like that. So that means timing and things like that. So I'm of the mind that it's easier earlier in the evening to have discussion and deal with these things than to do it later in the evening. So if we're going to continue, then we may need to have a break.
No, what's
Through
your,
you, Mr.
yeah, and yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead first. I'm
No,
not
no, I
on
just,
Zoom, so I can't see people, so.
yeah, I'm
thanks,
just asking for
Mr.
other comments. I'm just trying to decide what we want to do here.
Yeah, and Counselor Bray, sorry for cutting you off there. I probably would agree with what Counselor Bray said there. I don't care how long the meeting goes. If we're gonna try and get through this tonight, I don't mind how long it takes. But with 6 pages left and I see the red ink, and if people want some new stuff added or whatever, I honestly see this, I'm trying to be realistic. I probably see this taking another hour and a half or a couple hours to get through the final 6 pages, I'm guessing. So I think we just need to be cognizant of that. Are we going to extend for half hour and then go a couple more hours? Or I don't care how long we go. I think we need to see the will of council, how late we want to go tonight. And are we going to do everything we can to get through it no matter how long? Or we just go half an hour and then call it tonight? I don't care either way. I'll do whatever the majority of council would like.
So why don't I
But I
make the
don't want
motion
structure.
that we carry on until whatever time, 8 o'clock, which is 25 minutes. And then we take a 15-minute break and come back and continue till we finish.
Okay,
Uh,
so.
You know, I'm just saying that, I mean, this thing came up in December. It was the first discussion. We're nearly in August. And unless we finish, we can't get a legal review on a part of a document. And this thing's we're gonna be well into a year before we finish it. So we got to finish it. And so that's my motion, that we extend until it's finished with a 15-minute break at whatever time, George, you want to break. I'll grab it.
I do have to remind council, the procedure bylaw says curfew. No item of business shall be dealt with at a council meeting after 3.5 hours of the meeting unless authorized by resolution supported by 2/3 of the members. There's your 2/3 to an additional 1/2 hour. So that's what the procedure bylaw says. We have done other things. You can suspend the procedure bylaw, which we've done. We've extended it for additional 1/2 hour, which really isn't part of the procedure bylaw, but council has done that in the past. But I'm just letting you know what our current procedure bylaw says. If my opinion counts for anything, it might be helpful for me to go back, make all the changes that council has already talked about, make sure we've got that piece solid. Pick another special council meeting tonight, pick a date that we can zoom in and finalize some of these other items that I agree we'll have some conversation, need to have some conversation, certainly about the timelines. You don't want to set staff up to be unsuccessful, or the municipality to be unsuccessful with really, really tight timelines for delivering agendas. We can do it. We can give council the agenda package 7 days in advance of the meeting, but you'd have to leave with staff the remainder of the timelines to sort out in terms of the lead time. So whether it's 7 days or 5 days or whatever it is, but at the clerk's end, we have to figure out what those other timelines are and what makes sense. That's my thoughts.
Okay, so what am I doing? I'm frustrated, so.
Well, all right, why don't you?
Our bylaw says you can extend for 1/2 hour. That's what the bylaw says. The procedure bylaw. Or you can suspend the
And
procedure.
if you want to do
bylaw.
anything after that, it would have to be another motion to suspend the procedure. bylaw.
Okay, I'll make the motion to carry on for a 1/2 hour. It takes us 10 minutes of that 1/2 hour to decide what we're gonna do.
Yep. Is there a seconder for the motion?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Woods, seconds, I guess we need to take a vote. While we're doing that, I'll find the paper to write it down on.
Thank you, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes,
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Comrie.
I'm gonna say no.
That motion carries.
So I'm
So
sorry,
we-
was the mover again was, sorry, Councillor Lamb was the mover and Councillor Woods was the seconder.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
so we were last talking about 6.1.1. If I got it right, I want to make the changes suggested. Including Councillor Bray's comment, and Councillor Nash supported that. I guess the only one we haven't heard from is Councillor Woods. Does he have anything to say on this?
I do, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead.
Two heads are better than one, in my opinion. And I think the two senior council members, and I don't mean that by age, but deputy mayor and mayor working together and having a discussion about the agenda, I think should be, honestly, it should be normal. It should be a normal thing where you and Joe have discussions about items that might be coming up on the agenda. I think it would be beneficial for everyone.
Okay.
Okay, so we're on to 6.1.2, aren't we? Let me just speak on this about all the 7 days. My experience on council, and I don't, hopefully it puts it into perspective, is right now, as Michelle says, Tuesday, I didn't know it was Tuesday, but Wednesday, the agenda is made. Thursday, staff then have till Thursday at the end of the business day to send the agenda out, and Paula usually sends it to us. It's then put in the public on Friday, and we have our meetings generally on Tuesday, okay? I've wanted to extend that a little bit, but I think 7 days is way too long. I would say if it all backed up one day, so for in other words, the agenda is set on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, and then councilors get it, Wednesday night, it goes to the public Thursday for a Tuesday meeting is ample time for the public. And I can support something like that. If you start going 7 days back, my God, there's stuff that obviously won't be put on an agenda. But I just think it I don't know whether it makes it easier for staff or harder. I don't know. But I think we only need a 1 day sort of grace. So that's sort of more than what we have. But and that might settle a lot of this 7 day stuff. So because if you think of it, 7 days from a Tuesday, if it's 7 business days, I don't know whether it says business days or not, but you're back into the Friday before the meeting a week Tuesday, right? And that's really early to be setting agendas and sending them out to the public. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Mr.
Councillor
Mayor?
Bray.
Yeah, I agree with you, Councillor Lamb. I think that 7 days is a bit too long. I would, your 1 day, I can agree with. I really would like the 1 day when it's especially a long weekend and the Monday is a holiday, because then if you have questions, it's a little harder to get through everything on the Friday to be able to do that before we're all ready to Tuesday for the meeting. So yeah, 1 day would be great. And if it's too hard, then I would say 1 day earlier if it's a long weekend. Thank you.
So we would work off business days. And that happened recently where you saw the agenda come out to council on a Wednesday night as opposed to a Thursday, and to the public on the Thursday as opposed to a Friday, because we had the Monday, it was a holiday in lieu of Canada Day, and the meeting was Tuesday. So if we work off business days, if I know that council wants the agenda 3 business days instead of 2 business days in advance, I would suggest leave with the clerk's department where some of the other backup timelines are when the agenda gets to, or probably if we have the mayor and deputy mayor both looking at the agenda, I would say we probably need an extra day built in just for those conversations with the clerk. I don't know how often we'll actually need a 3-way meeting, but because sometimes the agendas are quite simple. There's not a lot to discuss, but at least you know what's coming up. And then some of the other timelines, the timelines that are, there's a suggestion here about staff reports, that has to be left entirely to the clerk's office and the CAO. I know some staff that write a report, I need it a week in advance because there's usually lots of edits, and others there's some simplicity to that. So as long as those reports and all that documentation is ready, it's up to the clerk and the CAO to make sure that's ready. Presentations, again, though we expect those, well before the meeting. We expect reports from the Parry Sound Area Planning Board well before the meeting because we usually have to review them. Councillor agendas items, it depends on, there's a note here that Councillor Nash wants all the resolutions along with the agenda package. I've seen that done before. It can be done, but you've got to, again, build in an extra day, because once the agenda is set and confirmed, it sometimes takes a day because someone writes the resolutions. The planning resolutions are written by a different person. I have to review them. We have to double check them. So all those timelines take a little bit of time, so that, those are the things that you have to leave with the clerk's department. Now that I know when you want the agenda, I'll come back with a schedule for those other timelines that build in a bit of a buffer, just in case people are sick or something happens, or we're busy doing something else in the office.
Yeah, and if I might, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if anybody else has their hands up.
I don't see any at the moment. Go ahead.
In regards to 6.1.2, which I know we're talking about now, whether it's 7 business days or 4 business days, you know, I'm sure council will come up to an agreement of what the majority of council wants, and that's what we'll adhere to. Part of the comments I'd said there is, and I think the municipality and everybody as a whole has been doing a little bit better job on it than maybe a few years ago, that council is receiving, I think, a little bit more background information and some more background reports in the agenda. What I really wanted to stress on this line item is, I know right now it says will be generally clerk in writing and will be generally be in accordance with the attached Schedule B. I don't know what Schedule B was. Obviously, we'll get that, you know, on the next revision of this. But what I wanted to kind of stress was to make sure that, you know, we have the full reports and the full background reports. It might make our packages a little bit bigger, whether it's 7 days or 5 days. I'm not too concerned on that. It's more making sure all the data is there. And I know just through my own work, and I think this will help staff out as well. You know, there's deadlines and everything. If the staff report isn't ready 7 days in advance, there's no way it's getting on the agenda. It's just, if it's not ready, it doesn't go on. If somebody hasn't handed in their stuff, be it a counselor or a member of the public, it just isn't going on the agenda, period. So we kind of have cutoff days for that. That'll help the clerk be able to put the agenda together. And whatever day we end up agreeing on, be it 5 days, if it rolls back to the Tuesday, you know, if we just have that day, I think once we get the first meeting done, it'll become a standard thing. And I don't think I'd be the majority of council when I say what I'm about to say, but I believe that staff put in a lot of time putting these agendas together. There's a lot of people hours on the agendas, from the resolutions to the publishing of it, to the proofreading of it, to the gathering of the reports. And it always seems like it's, you know, there's a council meeting one week, there's an agenda out the next week. It's always this revolving door, and I'm sure it takes dozens and dozens of hours for every one of these council meetings to be put together. I would hope that, you know, it might be something we can look at down the road, that to give staff a breather, that, you know, maybe we have longer council meetings, but further apart. So there's some time saving on the time it takes to do the agendas and everything every time. I know that might be hard to do, but maybe something we can think to do that would help with these timelines a little bit, right? I think at the end of the day. But anyway, sorry to go on so much there, but those are my points.
Okay, who hasn't spoken? Councillor Woods, do you have any opinion on?
A day early works for me. That would give a little bit more time when we have the larger agendas to do a little bit more research from, you know, a counselor perspective anyways.
Okay, I would have to say I still don't really understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve. I mean, we gave everybody 1 day when we moved from the meetings from Monday to Tuesday, and I think that did accomplish some things, because it gave a little bit more, did provide some additional lead time after the weekend. But I really feel that we're pushing maybe that's Counselor Nash suggested if we were having one council meeting a month or something, this wouldn't be so bad, but we are pushing back to, we expect, we have a meeting, we have resolutions, there's action items following that. Then we have other things. We're planning the next meeting out before we've actually had the meeting before it. And it's, I see this as being unmanageable for the, certainly unmanageable for the staff we have right now. Maybe in the future we will have more, but I'm not sure how it really helps anybody, because what do people do when they have something to review before our meeting? Well, they if they get it far enough in advance, they'll sit on it for a couple of days before they read it, right? So I don't know that it's really solving a problem. I don't have a problem with the timing as it is. So moving it back one additional day, I still think even one additional day is going to make it. Then trying to do things like we are going to try to get resolutions earlier, that pushes it back a day. Having discussions with the mayor and deputy mayor about what should be on the agenda and not on the agenda in the first place is going to push it back even further. We're going to be deciding what goes on the next agenda before we have the meeting, if we keep
No,
going. So I am not in favor of changing the protocol that we have right now.
Unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, the majority of council disagrees with you, so let's move on to the next item, please.
Well, just so you know, I think you're setting it's all up for failure.
Well, I don't want to even respond to that, so,
Well,
because I would probably go on for the next 10 minutes. So anyway, let's move on, please.
If I may just interject, if I understand a day earlier, we will work with that, but if council would allow me to, instead of spending time on all the other timelines and 1 o'clock here and this timeline here, now that I know when council wants the agenda package and when it's going to the public, leave the other timelines to our clerk's department. We'll work out a little bit of schedule. I'll come back with the next iteration and let you know what it looks like with the extra days that we need to accomplish what council wants. I can tell you, when I worked for the city of Kawartha Lakes, I had to have my final signed staff report into the CAO 3 weeks before the meeting. So I'm not unused to long leads, but I don't think we need that long lead, of course. But if you leave the other timelines with me, I'll come back and tell you what it looks like, and we'll try to make this as painless as possible.
okay,
I'm
six-
happy with that. Thank you.
yeah,
Okay,
thanks. All right,
We're-
6.1.3. You know what I think about this. The council meeting should, the agenda, every agenda should have the authorization to order the order of business. There is no reason, the order of business, there is no reason to say we're going to follow it in the order that it is if there's a need to change something around. And I don't think it's a matter of, I mean, the council approves at the start of every meeting, the council approves the agenda. The council, at that point in time, the agenda belongs to the council. The council could take items off it, and they could conceivably put an item on if there was some urgency, although we haven't got to this whole discussion about how things get on the agenda, right? But in any case, the chair needs the ability to alter the order of things depending on when somebody is available to deal with a particular thing. I see no consequence whatever of us doing that, and no reason for us to be slavish about saying, well, we're gonna follow the order no matter what. I mean, we may discover that we're running out of time and we got some things that have to, you know, be dealt with critically, and so we're gonna jump on this, you know, in the same meeting and not move it to another one, and so we're gonna jump ahead and do those. So I think this should simply say the council will you know, approve the agenda and authorize the chair to alter the order of business as necessary under the circumstances or something, and that's what it should say. Not, we don't need to have, you know, and here's the thing, unanimously authorized, you're gonna have unanimous votes on whether things are, I mean, how is that consistent with all the other arguments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think everywhere else was said majority vote. So that myself, I'd be perfectly fine with saying majority vote. I do think it should be up to council as a whole to say that they're okay with changing or altering the order. We just had a vote on the last meeting. And I think we also, it was fine for that meeting for you to do it if we needed to. But I don't think it should only be up to, in the case of this, only the chair to decide if it can get altered. I think it should be up to council as a whole, even if it's just the majority. I think there's some reasons for that, and you know, I think it should be, you know, the majority that feels stuff can get changed around. So I'd like to see that word added in, the majority of council. And not just
the chair approves the agenda motion by the majority of council. So if they don't want to alter the order of business, they could say so. But I'm just saying that's why.
Yeah.
What's the need to put in the procedure by all that you're going to do it in the order in which it's listed?
I think
I'm not proposing to take any authority away from council. I'm just trying to streamline this procedure so that it doesn't put us into a box that we.
Yeah,
But
think
in fairness, Mr. Mayor, you put us in a box when you started to say what you believe, and you inserted it in the last two meetings, that the chair can change the order, right? You're the one that did that. I didn't do that. And council let it go. I noticed it the first time. The second time I let it, or I guess we voted. And what we're simply saying is if you want to change the order and say we should do this to that, or Councillor Nash wants to say, you know, we can't have this. And I mean, we haven't had a problem on council. The vote's always been in the interest of the municipality. So I'm in agreement I don't agree with the unanimously. But I think if there's a change in the order, that it should be, you know, authorized by the council. So I'm with.
Well, it would, but it would be. I don't know. It's just this wording that we have right here started off with the assumption that it had to be, and again, I don't know where this. I'm objecting it to the same as the people who supplied the red ink. I guess I'm saying, why don't you just say, you know, that anyway.
Well, unless
I'm not taking anything away from the council. I'm just saying.
Well, it is, unless we read it. The council meeting will be considered the items to be dealt with in accordance with the order that is set out in the agenda, unless otherwise decided by the meeting chairman. That's what it says.
Well, okay, but that wasn't what I wanted. Well, that's what I wanted the thing to say. Unless otherwise decided by the council, it would be fine, I guess, if you want. But
okay, well, that's fine.
I'm telling you, a practical solution is that I think every motion should be a standard thing. And if people think there's a reason not to alter it, then they should say it. I mean, I'm just trying to make it easy so we don't end up.
Well, whatever the wording is, I think the agreement in with your support and Councillor Nash and myself, and hopefully Councillor Bray and Councillor Woods, is that it be by some vote of council if it's going to be changed. And,
Yeah.
and so let's move on. And
And-
I
and I
guess we're
think-
out of time.
I think
Yeah.
that's it. If you just take out meeting chairperson and put decided by the majority of council, I think that's it. Move on.
All right, let's do that then. So we have,
Okay. It is
yeah,
8:01.
okay, so what do we do now?
And if I might just say a few things to council here. I know I alluded to it a little earlier. I know some of you know some stuff that's going on with me or my family and others don't, but it's going to be hard for me to stay on the call probably until the end of this, just to let you know. So if we do decide to carry on, I will need to leave at some point. I just have some personal things I need to take care of. So
Well,
Okay,
and
well,
I think
my-
this, I'm going to end the meeting because I think the mayor would, I think we're all getting tired after this. So,
I would agree. I think I'm pretty tired and I think it'd be better if we would resume and we could deal with this last few pages, a fresh start. Thanks.
the only thing I would ask, Michelle, is if you, I mean, you can clean this document up based on the decisions of council tonight. I still think you can proceed with kind of a legal review and just continue to submit, including every comment after 6.1.4 to find out whether the changes or the proposed changes near the end are illegal. So we don't have to go get that later on. Like we can move along a little faster. Unless you think otherwise. I just don't want to get to the end and then we have a legal review. And again, that's the timing of trying to get this thing done. So.
No, that's fair enough. I've got a number of things on my plate, including some recruitment, a demanding AODA directorate that wants an update on our accessibility. I'm working on the RFP for the community center audio. There's probably, and the rental unit bylaw, I made some commitments at that. So I've got a lot on my plate, but so it's going to take me a bit of time to
Hello, sorry.
get it done. Did you want to talk about setting another special council meeting? Because if there's anything I do well, I work to deadlines. So if I have a deadline, and I know what's expected, then it's doable. So with everybody here and thinking about your calendars, we can think about when we can reconvene. I'll certainly have an updated document for you. And hopefully a little bit of legal advice on some of these items that we're under discussion.
Well, what are you, sorry, are you suggesting a time frame for the,
I think we've lost Joe.
I think we did.
We did lose Joe, which is
oh,
unusual.
okay, yes, he has disappeared. You're right. Well, wait, give him a sec, he might come back.
I'll see if he comes back. Yeah, my suggestion is if you want to think about when the next special council meeting will be to deal with this and hopefully get some finality to the document or very close, then we can look at calendars. And
I'm just gonna go get my calendar. Hang on.
Michelle, do you have a suggestion of a date?
well, I'm going to open my calendar here. I would have to
'Cause you
admit,
know
I was
what-
hoping for a little bit of reprieve in August. We have a regular council meeting August 1st, possible closed session meeting on the 3rd. And other than that, council doesn't meet again until September 5th, it looks like.
Yeah.
So
So what would the 8th look like?
the 8th of August.
Mhm.
That's, well, we can open up.
It's
the-
right after the civic holiday. That's the only,
Mhm.
is
Well,
that too soon?
that is not too soon to have the refinements made to the document, no. Let me give Counselor Lamb a call. I don't see him. Has anybody texted Counselor Lamb to see if he's okay? Mute myself. I've got Counselor Lamb on the line. He's lost his connection. What we were doing, Counselor Lamb, is see if we could pick a date for a special council meeting to reconvene to discuss the procedure bylaw again. Counselor Bray suggested August 8th, and I don't think anybody else has commented yet on that date.
Let me see. So, no, it's fine. Zoom, the 8th is fine for me.
Okay,
I'll stay on until it's decided. So,
all right. I'm just looking, Mayor Comrie, does the 8th work for you?
Of August?
Yes.
Sure.
Counselor Woods, would that work for you?
Yeah, I should be able to make the 8th work, no problem.
And I'm just looking to Counselor Nash.
And thanks, Michelle. I can try and make that work as well.
Okay, and are we agreeable to 4 o'clock?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
All right, thank you. That we'll get that set up then. Thank you.
okay, good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Night.
good night, Joe.
Great, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we should wrap up a few formalities here, if you don't mind. Let me find the rest of my order papers here. I think the next thing we need to do is we need to reconvene to a regular meeting. Mover and seconder,
I'll move.
moved by Counselor Bray, seconded by
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Woods. Looks like you guys are on duty here. All right, and it's what time is that? It's 8:09 PM. So I guess we have to call the vote. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Counselor Bray,
Yes,
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Carrie.
Okay, so that's carried. Next thing we need to do is, I guess we don't really need a motion, or do we? Do you want a staff direction, Madam CAO, or are you okay?
I'm fine. I'll do a clerk's note within the minutes
All
that
right.
that provided some general overall direction. I think it was quite clear during the discussion.
All right. Confirmatory bylaw. Counselor Woods moves, Counselor,
I can
Today's
second that.
all
Oh,
right, Counselor Nash.
good.
That was Counselor Nash, was it, the segment? Okay, all right. That's what I thought. Okay, once again,
Counselor Bray,
Yes,
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
yes.
Thank you, carried.
All right. And last but not least, adjournment. Counselor Bray. Counselor Woods, right? Seconds? Good. That the meeting be adjourned at 8:11 PM.
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
that is carried.
All right, we are done. Thank you very much. Have a
Good night,
evening,
everybody.
Yeah,
Good
thanks,
night.
everybody. Good night.
Good night,
Take
everyone.
care. Bye.
Bye.
I know.